Hello and welcome to the BNB Show. My name is Brandon, still recovering Kane over here, so bear with me, folks, and my cohort here to the left, Brendan Nelson of Seahawks. Brendan Nelson back in the house here to do this final chop up of the final draft day. Brendan, it's great to have you in the house. How are you doing here after your draft coverage here?
Good to be here. Good to be alive another day. Good to be through yet another draft, another very, very crucial part of this offseason. And I'm happy to try to figure it out with you.
There we go. Well, let's we give it a couple days on this for me and Brendan to kind of recover after our 3 days straight streams to kind of get our voices somewhat bounced back. I'm still just about there, but not quite. You sound pretty good though, so you bounced back well off it. So we did cover, folks, the first 2 days directly after day one and day two of the draft. And there hasn't been any major news to talk about. We might cover a little bit at the end of the show, but I want to really kind of keep the draft at the forefront here is the main thing that we discussed tonight. And so me and Brendan are going to get into day three today and then just kind of the draft as a whole in the recap of it. So we finished off with day 1, 2, which only 2 picks, Brendan. Wasn't a lot done on it. And then we got into day 3, where our Seattle Seahawks moved back in the draft a little bit. And I think that a little bit of that, from my point and take on that, was that they did so because of the fact that there had been so many kind of sliders that I don't think that they anticipated was going to be there. And if dropping back to kind of get themselves, I think, out of the 7th round, back in the 6th round, where they saw maybe there still being some value in the draft and kind of in a more like, I'm not going to say the money portion of the draft, but where they still saw there was some talent there versus, I feel like they kind of indicated as we were thinking coming into this that no 7th round picks. We'll trust our UDFAs, and there isn't anybody that we're going to have to grab in the 7th round there. Was that your take as well?
Yeah, and we kind of ended up using our last 6th round pick in the way that most teams would use a 7th round pick, where you take a guy who clearly is not of a draftable quality, but you take him because you want to make sure you get him. You don't want to leave it to UDFA randomness. So we did end up kind of using our last 6th rounder in that way anyway. And at the end of the day, I don't think there's a big difference there. I thought the trade down was pretty good. We were basically able to add an additional 5th rounder, I think, in exchange for giving up a high 4th round pick for a mid 4th round pick. And I will say this, the Seahawks didn't seem that interested in taking advantage of the surprising value that was still available in the 4th round. I'll just go ahead and put it that way. So it seemed like they had a couple guys that they really liked that they were confident would be there later in the 4th. So they didn't seem to be interested in taking the surprising fallers the way that I may have done personally.
Yeah, me either. And that definitely struck me a little off guard, and that the opening of day 3 was kind of that they weren't going, ooh, we got to continue to take advantage of this as we had kind of in the first 2 days of the draft, frankly, in the other rounds. But that does get us to about the midpoint of the 4th round where we picked for the first time. And the Seahawks gave us the first curveball, I think, in a little bit of time. We've had picks that haven't made, but all the picks you kind of understand with the guys they draft last couple of years with. This was a pretty kind of big curveball for a lot of the fan base. I'm just not expecting this one at all. What was your outlook and take on Tyrese Knight?
Well, Tyrese Knight. Well, let me start off by saying this. There is a canyon-sized difference between taking 2nd round and 3rd round caliber players in the 1st round and then taking a 5th round caliber player in the 4th round. So what I'm about to say, keep in mind, I'm not saying that it's on the level of many recent Seahawks picks like LJ Collier, Jermaine Ifedi, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
But I definitely did view it as a reach. I think that it was. I personally had like a 5th round grade on Tyrese Knight. I know a lot of places had about a 6th round grade on him. I think the aggregate had him in the early 6th, if I recall. So there was some element here of Mike McDonald just sees something he likes with this guy and he wants to make sure he gets him. And if he's willing to reach a little bit to make that happen. That's what happened here. I don't think there's any issue with acknowledging that. That being said, I do like the player. I don't have a huge problem with it. In fact, the fact that it is, objectively speaking, a value reach is the only real problem I have. Obviously filling a need because we needed at least one linebacker in this class. And there is definitely some stuff to like about him. I'm a little bit surprised that this is the kind of linebacker that McDonald is coveting, if that is indeed what happened here. I'm a little bit curious to know what about Knight really jumped off the page to him. But on the surface level, I can definitely see this guy being a good player. He had remarkable college production, lot of backfield penetration. Over the last 2 years, he's had, I think, 22 tackles for loss. He's a good tackler, good in zone coverage. He just the things that I'm wondering with him right now, he doesn't seem like he sheds blocks all that well, which I thought McDonald might be coveting in the same way that I thought we were going to covet Colson for that reason. Change of direction skills aren't totally there, and he struggles a little bit in man coverage. So there is definitely some stuff to work on. I think he's a little out of control right now, but I didn't hate it. I just am surprised that this is the approach they took.
Yeah, I think I would echo that much of my issue really more comes down to the value of what you're doing there and what was available there and what you chose to do instead on a guy that, look, somebody made a point to me in my live stream that the Eagles traded 2 picks after, right after Seattle took Tyrese, and that they may have looked at him because they ended up taking a middle linebacker later on as well. That may have been a guy that they had been looking to target there. So maybe the league very well had Tyrese there. I went back and watched the Oklahoma tape today of 2022 with Tyrese Knight. I keep trying to kind of grind through and find what tape I can find that's that tape that, okay, here's the one that shows you. Thing I come back to too, and looking at sort of where he's had his greatest production, where he's done his best work is against this lesser competition. When you get him in games like this game against Oklahoma, where they hung 35 up on them in a half, you go, okay, he looks a little outmatched, and there's some problems with I keep, it was great to hear Mike McDonald say, well, he's got instincts. I like this instincts, and it's really, to me, more if he's aggressive. He's just trying to go to a spot, and that's good, and that he's willing to really, ball out to try to get to an area, but he also is then hyper over aggressive and gets, taken into misdirection and guessing wrong and picking the wrong spot because he's not really on it with the pre-snap indicators to me. But as I said from the start with this, haven't had a lot of tape on the UTEP overall versus some of the prospects we've looked at, Brendan. And I hope I'm wrong on that one with him and that he is the guy where we come to find with Mike McDonald, much like with Coach Jerrel, he is able to take a player and that like a cornerback position and really turn them into something. If he has these certain base skills he's looking for that he kind of can't teach, then he should just kind of come in the door. But this one was one still that does strike me in the draft. One of the ones that was the head scratcher. Like you said, it's not on the same level. You're doing this in the day 3. You're not going to stand up and stomp and get mad. This is day 3. It's very hard to find even league average starters in day 3. So taking risks, taking chances, having something you may just kind of see in a guy, it's okay. It's not some huge, misstep by the organization. Go that route. You're much better do it there than do it on day 1 or day 2.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm saying, because there are some draft graders out there, because I've had a look at some of the experts and their draft grades for every team. There were a couple that said something akin to, oh, we loved the first 2 days from the Seahawks. We loved those first 2 picks, but day 3 was weird. So C+. Like that doesn't compute. What you do in the first 2 days is orders of magnitude more relevant than what you do on day 3. So if a organization wants to take kind of a vanity pick or a reach pick or a I just like him pick in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round, I'm not going to begrudge them doing that every now and then. Like every now and then, that's okay. The problem was we started doing it much earlier than that. Nevertheless, there were definitely some linebackers that I thought more of when our pick came up that were still available. I will say this. I suspect that Jeremiah Trotter was too small for what McDonald has in mind for his defense. He does seem to like the bigger guys. Not that Knight's huge or anything like that. I think he's like 233, probably playing weight is a little bit heavier than that. But the thing that kind of threw me off a little bit.
He feels shorter than 6 foot, though, doesn't he? On the field when you watch him. I mean, they listed him that. They measured it that. It just, maybe it's the high cut, whatever it is. He just does feel a little shorter than that.
Yeah, he plays with a slouch. He's like a little down on himself. He's a little depressed.
It's just gonna,
it's like Greg Oden did that. Greg Oden did that in college. He was 7 feet tall, and everyone thought he was like 6'9" because he was just slouched all the time.
Yeah, that is kind of his man around that. It might be it.
He's got good speed, but It does kind of feel like it's more straight line speed than great athleticism in reality. I feel like that when it comes to the things like change of direction and explosiveness, it's just kind of you know. There is some stuff to like for sure, but overall, I am wondering about this one a little bit because again, he's kind of a super aggro gap shooter who doesn't get off blocks well. And I thought that if McDonald would have a type, it would be the opposite, like a Junior Colson, someone who doesn't shoot gaps like ever. Like Junior Colson doesn't know how to do anything in the backfield, but he's great at shedding blockers and great at making plays around the line of scrimmage. So time will tell, but that one was a little bit of a surprise to me. I can fully acknowledge that.
Yeah, me as well. Me as well. And like I say, time will tell. We'll see where he goes on that. Definitely on the board too. Like I said, go back to it. The value of the board seemed like some guys that had dipped that the foreseeable the team would have it even late third round grade or somewhere in that neighborhood versus guy. But they liked him a lot. Can't deny that. So we continue moving on through this fourth round, Brendan, on to another pick that I think surprised some people. But with me, because you and I were talking about this guy very early on at some point, I feel like we were. Because I liked him a lot because he looked so much like Will Disley to me. So, I felt like this happened in the draft on a couple of players that were taken. You remember the kid that I said was Marshawn Lattimore, and then the Saints ended up taking him.
Kool-Aid?
Yeah, Kool-Aid McKinstry. Yeah. And it's like, I think this stuff happens at times where these teams do the same thing where they look at a player, they go, man, that guy looks so much like this guy we had in-house in so many ways. And with this guy, it's not just the blocking thing that it is with Disley. It's also, the little bit of yak he gives you after the catch, the actual soft hands, the ability to catch in contact situations in short spaces. I really liked this pick. First, it seemed like some of the fan base was not as high on this one. I'd be interested to hear where you came from, though, on it.
I kind of feel about it about the same way that I felt about the Knight pick. I do think it's a little bit interesting that you chose AJ Barner over Cade Stover because in my mind, Cade Stover was a clearly better player. And I can't quite justify it in the same way that I think I can justify passing up on someone like Trotter. Like I can look at Trotter and say he's too small. I think Barner and Stover are both exactly the same weight. Barner's a little taller. He's got a frame that could add some more weight. And by the way, I think he's going to need to. He's like 251. I think Disley played at like 260 something. So I do think he should put on a little bit of weight. But I did view it as a fifth round player going in the fourth round. So I have a little bit of that same thing with Barner that I did with Knight. But I think maybe what happened here is that they wanted a finished product as a blocker, which is Barner. He's a really good blocker out the box. Like he should immediately be able to give you plus level blocking. Whereas Stover, not so much. Stover is a work in progress in that regard. I think he can get there, but maybe they just don't want to take the time to develop him in that way. I do like some stuff about him, mostly when it comes to the blocking stuff. I think he's a hard worker, which means that if he can maximize himself in some way, he probably will. So that stuff is obviously great. He's good working off script as well, which I know isn't a huge part of football most of the time, but it can be. And while he doesn't offer a ton as a pass catcher, and I don't think his hands are very good, I don't think he's going to be a downfield playmaker. There is some stuff going on here with his ability to make yards after the catch. I think that someone posted a stat. He is second in the country in the last 3 years for broken tackles behind only Brock Bowers, which is kind of surprising to me. You would not have predicted that. This guy only has like 70 something catches over the last 3 years, but he piles up those broken tackles. So I think it's okay. I think it's fine. I don't have a problem with it. Just still a little bit, I feel like it was suboptimal, that's the word I would use.
I do. I think I was much lesser on Cade Stover than you were overall at the end of the day. I felt even the last evaluation point of when I gave it to him, I just was like, all right, well, everyone's kind of telling this. It almost felt pushing there versus the tape. I thought it was pretty unexciting, the Stover tape and what you saw from Ohio State. There wasn't really something he was giving you as a good skill. He wasn't giving you yak. He gets tackled on the first guy that gets him. He wasn't giving you great blocking. He was giving you okay blocking. When it comes to being a dynamic pass catcher or some athletic pass catcher down the field, I just didn't really ever see that of Cade Stover. And I think when you go to AJ Barner, I don't think it's an excuse to say You're playing in the Michigan offense. There's going to be a guy next year that probably goes in the first round out of Michigan that's going to be a tight end in an NFL first round. So like, where is he to, if he's not as dynamic as that guy as a pass catcher, he's not getting touches first thing as the tight end one on that. You have receivers on the outside that can catch. They got multiple running backs they're going through. They barely throw the ball as it is. You do go back and track back to what he did with Ohio when Michael Penix was there. And a lot of people, including like Brock Huard was talking about, he was their second most important target when he was on that team. And you can only do with what the team requires you to do. What I love about this kid, Brendan, is that he fit himself into what the team wanted him to do, despite having that productivity of Ohio. And he went and won a national title on the back of understanding what that means to give in for the team and not be about the self or whatever else. And that's where the comp comes back to Disley. It wasn't just the blocking. It was the aspect of when Disley walked in the door, it's before he was robbed of those 2 injuries on the lower leg, he was able to give you yak. That was his thing when he was out the gate. He was almost impossible to tackle after the first catch a little bit, and how hard he was to bring down. I think that was a little bit robbed of him, tiny bit, but even when we'd give him chances to catch over the last couple of years, it would still show up. So I always thought that the upside here was a little bit more in that than even a guy where you had with Stover, where, I think he's kind of top to where he is as the player, and that's probably why he didn't come behind. But bare minimum, if he doesn't give you anything as a pass catcher, you're going to get an outstanding run blocker in the run game. And that pairing with Pharaoh Brown now, Brendan, 12 personnel, the ability to come out there, maybe George Fant is the third tight end, the ability to come down on teams now and really attack in the ground game and make that a problem for them. What are you going to do? You can bring that extra defender down. We got DK as the single wide receiver. Does DK now get kind of some one-on-one, some sub one-on-one kind of, looks out there?
Mm-hmm. And Pharaoh's only on a 1-year deal. So before long here, you're looking at AJ as being your tight end too. So I don't think Barner's hands are as good as Disley. Disley had really nice hands coming out. I think Barner, his hands are not quite on that level, but the comp is otherwise pretty good. He's a rare tight end that can actually play in line. And I know that sounds weird to say.
How do you get to that? How do you get to that on the hands thing? Walk me through that one.
I was looking at some of the numbers that I saw on what
he was targeted 25 times and he made 19 catches.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to try to find the site I used, but it said that he dropped quite a pretty decent drop rate.
All right, that's fair enough. That's the thing. I was like, and watching the last, he's not getting thrown to, and when he's throwing, he's catching it. So it's like, if he drops it twice, and they're like, well, now he's got an 18% catch. Well, he's only targeted 25 times on the season, so that becomes the sample size, right? At that point, and draw distinctions on that if it's at that point.
Okay, I'll definitely have more to say about him in a couple weeks when I've really had a chance to, go through some of these, go through some of this tape in full. But yeah, he's an excellent inline blocker, and I think he could get even better. And it's kind of rare that you see, and at the end of the day, it's just rare a tight end who's ready to play in line. So many of these guys come out and you're like, oh, that guy's never going to be able to line up in line. That's going to be a disaster. So that there's definitely value there. I don't know how much Ryan Grubb is going to be leaning on 2 tight end sets. I feel like he would prefer to go 3 receivers as much as possible. But we know that last year he did opt towards a more 2 tight end heavy offense. I think that was because McMillan was hurt most of the year, but there is certainly some possibility here of Barner being an immediate contributor. If an injury happens, then of course he's going to be the next guy up. And by the end of the year, he might even be ahead of Pharaoh Brown on the depth chart. Who knows? Like, it's not like Pharaoh Brown's had such an amazing career to where he should just get handed the tight end 2 job. Absolutely.
Do you buy in that maybe this gives you an opportunity next year too for the flexibility on Fant if you're looking to do the super salary shave cut thing? I'm kind of anticipating they may try to do next year, where this guy slides into number 1, and to your point on staying in 3 wide receiver sets, especially if JSN's still here, and they depending on what happens with Lockett after this year, of course. Maybe that this is also a little bit in a weird way, drive towards that in the future potentially.
Yeah, I thought there was a decent chance Fant would get released after this season, regardless. It depends on how he does. He's due a lot of money next year. Yeah. So if he doesn't have a big season, then I think it's very, very possible he's gone just because of that. But I mean, the pick's fine. I don't have a big problem with it for sure. I think he's a good player. I don't think it's a big reach or anything like that. We took a guy who I had in the 5th round in the kind of sort of late-ish 4th round, I think. At 121, so closer to the middle than the bottom. But at that point in the draft, again, it's not that big of a deal. Like we're on day 3 now. This is where you do reach if you really, really like a player.
Yeah, and it is nice to get at least the one fit. Let's just say, again, he gives you nothing as a receiver. You're maybe getting a guy that should come in and give you top 9 run blocking as a tight end, kind of walking in the door to try to be like conservative with it. Is that fair?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard for me to believe he won't be at least a good blocker. And, as Pharaoh Brown has proven, you can have a little bit of an NFL career by just being a blocker. Pharaoh Brown's almost, he did burn us. I think it was Sauce Gardner in a game for a touchdown last year. So he's got that. But for the most part, he's not any kind of a threat in that regard.
What would you say if you saw 15 tight ends in this draft, how many of them would you say were just about bad to almost atrocious as blockers?
Well, let me think here. Sanders was pretty bad. Sinnott was okay. I'm not going to throw him in there. Wiley, I think, was pretty bad, if I'm recalling correctly. I'm just trying to think about this for a second. Holker was bad, the Colorado State guy.
Spanford,
yeah.
Shaheem Bell.
The FSU guy. I think that's Bell, right?
Yeah, that's Bell.
Yeah, pretty bad.
Eric Hall.
Eric Hall. Oh yeah,
Iowa.
The Iowa guy. Well, he's from Iowa. If you don't.
He didn't like the block. He was not a fan. He wanted to catch the ball and go be a yak guy. He was like the rare guy that, he tried, but because you're right, in Ohio you got to at least try, but they're not going to let you just get away with like no effort. But it's hard to find. It's a tougher skill set than the average fan might think in this day and age to actually locate as well. Well, all right, let's keep it moving. So we get through the 4th round. And we start to turn our way now into the next round with our next pick. And that is, I just got my notes up here on this. Sorry. Got to Pritchet. We got on the 5th
Nehemiah Pritchet. Yes.
Nehemiah Pritchet. The Seahawks still got Auburn cornerback here, Brendan.
We're reuniting the Tigers defense.
We are reuniting the Tigers defense. I know we did talk about Pritchet in our cornerback show. Remind me where you where you were on him.
Yeah, he was one of my top sleepers in this draft.
Let's go, Brandon.
I really, really liked him.
Nice.
I put a 3rd round grade on him.
Oh yeah.
I think it ended up being somewhere in the mid-3rd, but I really thought there was a little bit of sleeping being done on Pritchet. Tested really well, at least in terms of speed. His straight line speed is one of the fastest in this draft. He's capable of playing man, and he's also capable of playing zone. He's also good. He can play press as well. He's got a firm jab in press that has generally impressed me. He's aggressive at the catch point. He's got great change of direction skills. Very rarely gives up separation. He uses his speed really well when he's trying to stay in phase with these receivers. There are some cornerbacks out there who are fast, but they still give up separation because they're just not comfortable sticking with a receiver in man. But this guy can do it. I think he's a smart play reader as well, which is going to help him in zone. If you let him face the offense and look at the play developing, I think he's good in that role. The only big problem I had with him, and this is not nothing, let me be very clear about that. This is not nothing. I think he needs to get a lot better as a tackler. He needs to get better in run defense. And in this defense, he's not going to be able to get away with that, especially not this defense. So I think he's got some work to do to make that up. His click and close is a little tentative, I think, but that's something that can probably be coached up. If I had to guess, I would expect that that's something that can be worked on and improved. Probably needs to add a little bit of weight, but he's got a 6-foot frame, 190 pounds. He can probably add a little bit of weight and it'll be okay. But a lot of potential here, few rough edges to smooth out. He was a guy that I liked way more than the average. I'll put it to you that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, in regards to the corners we ended up taking, to me, this is right where I basically had them put on the horizontal board for me. So it was not a, it was a fine value pick, where they were taking them. And Brendan, this was something we talked about with both the receiver and the cornerback position that I think can't be undersold. I believe you agree with this, that, when you come in this draft, you're talking about picking from a value-based standpoint. if your two deepest positions in a draft are going to be receiver and cornerback, and your team is operating from that value-based mindset, good chance you're going to end up walking away with a cornerback or two, right? Because that's just the conundrum of that kind of philosophy.
Yeah. I wasn't thinking about things like need at all at this point in the draft. Arguably, you shouldn't be thinking about need very much at any point during the draft, but I'm certainly not going to do it in the 4th round when I see a guy who I view as being tremendous value there, which in this case, I definitely did. We are maybe a year away from Jackson being gone. He's on the last year of his deal, if he's not gone already, because we can't afford him.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Trey Brown in the last year of his deal. This is a big year for Reek Woolen. If he doesn't do well, he might be basically persona non grata in 2025. There's a lot of potential for turnover in this cornerback room, depending on what happens in 2024. So bringing in another one is not going to be something I'm going to have any complaints about.
Nor I, as we're seeing too with this draft, the amount of receivers that go on the other side of it. You need the guys that can cover these guys, right? You got to get the dudes that can run with these dudes. And 149, Brendan, is a very rare testing score you see pop up on the 10-yard split. The 4.3 is great, but that 10-yard split too. I think everything you said in your evaluation, I tend to agree with as far as that's, my outlook with them as well. Do you buy into maybe my pet theory on the whole Auburn hyper cover 3 dropping, and Seattle recognized that a little bit? And when they're watching the tape going, man, they're setting these guys up so much. Or did you see that same thing? Maybe I just saw it. I was noticing it. Or did you see the same thing where they're both those two corners, when they're asked to drop deep, they're going deep.
Yeah, I did see a fair amount of that. And like I said, I think that this guy showed the ability to play press when he was asked to do it, which wasn't a ton, but I like his jab and press. It seemed like it was nice and effective. I think he'll be able to play man and zone. So whatever defense you're running, he'll probably be able to fit in. And obviously right now we're running this Mike McDonald defense, but down the line, maybe we won't be. Maybe at some point he brings in a DC who wants to do things a little bit differently. Maybe if McDonald doesn't work out, we're ending up with a different head coach in a couple years, and he's going to want to do things his way, or maybe he hires a DC that wants to do things his way. I think this guy's going to fit in no matter what.
Yeah. Well, and I think too that with McDonald, he has come from a background of that defense houses itself in man coverage concepts years ago. He's built in more zone coverage concepts. I think the thing that he's showing us when he's talking about this defense a little bit is he wants it to be kind of everything all across the board, or capable of being everything across the board. And that means working zone, working man, and having a guy like this with that flexibility that can do both is hard to find, Brendan. You either find the guys that run zone or they can just run man. Or if they do have been running both, they don't run both comfortably. And man, for him to only give up 126 yards receiving, I think I heard that was the lowest amount of any starting cornerback in the SEC last season. That is no small little kind of ribbon on his mark, right, Brendan? Because the competition you're going up against in that conference.
You're at Auburn. You're often outmatched too. You don't have the talent. You don't have the horses that a lot of the teams you play against do right now. There was a time when Auburn did, but right now it's they get a handful of good guys every year, and these other teams are getting like 3 handfuls. So it's an uphill battle. And I think he did really well. Like you said, the metrics were really good in coverage. He doesn't have tremendous ball production over the last couple of years. Like last year, he had 3 passes defensed. But I'm really high on this guy personally. And this was actually the pick I gave an A+ to, which a lot of people were surprised by. But I was like, this is one of my guys.
Hey, that's the good part about when you do the pre-draft shows, Brendan, is you go like, hey, I'm no Johnny come lately here. I had this guy, as my sleeper guy. So that's why I love it, man. Because it's like, I'm on the books of saying this is one of my guys. So I did like him a lot as well. I thought with him and both the teammate he'll talk about in your second, Brendan, that just they were held back a little bit by the way the scheme had them, though it did allow them to run some man coverage concepts. It seemed like predominantly they were in off coverage and then dropping bail cover 3 almost every single time. And DJ really struggled with it, where he was so wanted to stay on top, and there'd be some just easy completions underneath, and it wasn't really his fault. He's just going, man, he's just being asked coach to really get back there. But I guess Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Xavier Leggett, they're that hard to cover down the field. I guess that's the way it goes.
Lot to ask.
Lot to ask. Well, we're going to go to the next pick here for me, and one that I had my own A grade on here as we go to the next one. I'll try to give the run here. You always do pronunciations on the Polynesians better than me, but let me go here. Let me do this here. Let me do this, Brian. Sataoa Laumea.
Close enough. Everyone's
All
going
right.
to know who you're talking about.
Okay, we're going with that.
Laumea, this was a guy I missed. This guy must have rocketed up the aggregate big board at the last second, because I was not aware of his existence until the moment we drafted him. So I swung and missed, because I went back and looked at the aggregate board, and he was rated in about the 5th round. So he must have moved up there at the last minute. I have looked at him a little bit since the draft, of course, and I like most of what I see. It seems like he's a pretty well-rounded guard prospect. Seems like he's somebody with strength and mobility, somebody with a pretty good degree of athleticism. So on the surface level, I think the pick is good. I think the pick is totally fine. I am interested to see who moves to left, because now we've got 3 right guards on this roster, not including Ankrum, by the way, just with Bradford, Haynes, and now Sataoa. But one of those guys probably has to bump over to the left, and I have no idea who it could be. Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, I think we come back to Christian Haynes or Bradford being the guy. The Bradford, the thing is that he has a right guard skill set with left guard mobility. And so there's going to be a place where, if he can get the skill set refined, he can work at left guard, and you're not stretching him over to do that. That's not Damian Lewis, right? He can really, remember, what was it, 90? He was a 99th. He was like a 97th, right? Percentile on the RAS. Was Bradford something like that?
He was way up there. He was one of the most athletic guards ever.
So he's big, he's big, athletic, and long. If he can get the tech right, he could work over there. And then Haynes, I think, is just as capable. I'm not, with me, Brendan, doing this show for years, I'm not a guy that jumps up and says guards can tend to go and float back and forth, but that is kind of what you've established with Bradford and Haynes, is that these are guys that, yes, they played predominantly on the right guard side. And at Bradford's case, he's started a total, I think, of, 25 games in his career between, 20 games in his career between pros and college here. So he's still definitely a work in progress, but they've got the skill set to do it. The thing that you run into trouble wise when you go with these right guards to left guards is the Damian Lewis situation, where you're just taking a guy that's already been put at right guard to kind of reduce down some of the issues you have with him in pass protection and mobility concerns. And now you're, really like putting a big spotlight on it at that point. So I think those guys will eventually, one of those two, let them battle it out. And I'm sure one of those two will find a way to get their spot over there. And you got Lakin as your kind of insurance policy if it just all goes to hell and the guys can't make that transition. So it's not the worst places to be, and it's just goes to show you how hard it is to find the left guard, I suppose. But I agree with you on your outlook on Sataoa. He is right guard. Yeah, all the way. He's not going to be left guard at all.
Yeah, the insurance company that sold us that insurance policy has just filed for bankruptcy, by the way. So I'm really hoping it's not that.
That's okay. Yeah, that's not a good sign. So might be going wrong here. Yeah. I'm not loving Lakin in the spread offense at his age. Yes, I'm with you on that one. That's going to look that's going to have some tough moments. No screenplays, I guess, if we're doing that, maybe.
Right.
But I like this guy, Brendan. The thing I like about him at the right guard is he can handle, I think, any nose tackle in the sport. And though he's not a real explosive mover front to back, which that's questions for me about him as in a puller or whatnot, he's going to be able to mash. He's going to be able to drive guys off the line. And I think he'll be able to hit reach blocks, which will be another characterized block in this attack as a necessity. With that lateral movement ability, he's got a little bit to his game. That's what helped him stay at right tackle to me, was that sort of kick slide thing that he could do, where he's not really exploding, but he's able to just get himself so wide. He's naturally really wide, and then long arms, and really just kind of leaned on that at the right tackle. Do you see upside with this guy as a right guard in there, or do you find yourself coming back, taking another look at him and saying, well, it's fine in the 6th round?
I do view him as a right guard. I am choosing to look at him through that lens. It might be a situation where at some point he has to get an opportunity to play on the right tackle side, but I would certainly want to keep him at guard if possible, at least to start. And maybe if he washes out there, you can try something else. Although usually it doesn't work that way, right? Usually you don't go from guard to tackle. You go from tackle to guard and then maybe guard to center. That's the Justin Britt pipeline.
That's right. Exactly. That's the pipeline to success, baby. $25 million contract.
Mhm.
And I do think I don't think he has tackle ability at the pro level. I think he'd get in some trouble out there if you asked him to do that. Do you trust in his upside there at that guard spot, that there is some upside there? Or do you think it's just a guy that this is a backup guy for the foreseeable future? I do think that there's some starting ability here. That's why I had a 4th round grade on him.
Especially at right guard. Absolutely, he could start at right guard. I think when you think about that position being kind of deprioritized in the modern NFL, where most teams, I think, are focused on getting the other 4 positions right, and then they just plug in some guy at right guard. And in our case, we do want a right guard with athleticism and movement skills, of course.
Yeah.
But he has that. I mean, maybe it's not on the level of a guy like Christian Haynes,
Right.
but Sataoa can move.
Yeah.
I think he's got that based on my initial read of him, which again is not at all comprehensive because this was a guy I missed in my evaluations. But I think that he could absolutely be a starter in this league as long as he's surrounded by good players, which hopefully going forward he will be.
Yeah, I look at it the same way, especially for me, the kind of one of the old barometers on if a guy could kick inside is if you played tackle at a college level, but your true position is guard. That in itself tells you that you've got the athleticism and movement ability if you're needed to do that once you go into guard to get that done. Because you go from being a guy's like kind of barely getting along in the athleticism point out on the edge to, oh, now you're kind of a plus mover inside. I mean, that tends to be the way that goes, logically speaking, when you go from the outside in like that.
Yeah, so I like the pick, but I need to look more into this guy in particular because again, I just missed. There are always going to be guys that you miss in the pre-draft process.
He's got his fun of blocks you'll find on tape with some prospects already going back and watching. Brandon, if you've seen a few of them, he's got some fun cut-ups of him just dirting guys, and he's got one where he gets 2 blocks on one play, and it's cool highlight film for a lineman you rarely see.
Seems like those guys never work out, right? It was Alex Leatherwood who had the most fun tape in the draft for an offensive lineman that year, and Tom Cable fell in love with him based on that rather than him being, a good player.
Yeah.
There was the Ike Ekwonu. He was the most fun tape in the draft that year, and so far he's been pretty bad, I'm gonna say.
Yeah. Well, that's where it's, to me, the brilliance of this pick. Those guys first rounders.
Mm-hmm.
This 6th rounder. That's it. If you got the flashes. And the thing is, I think his tape's actually, I don't know if it's Iguano had pretty consistent tape overall, but it was there was rough edges, but definitely in Leatherwood's case, there was rough edges all over the place. He's got a little more consistent tape with what he showed, especially when you see him as a run blocker in the Utah system. He gets outmatched as a tackle and pass pro, but that's the reason to kick him inside to guard. You know, that's why he's got to go in there. So makes sense. Give me catch up a couple of these donos and whatnot. Filipino Noir, thank you for becoming a member of the channel. I appreciate you. And I'm not sure it's your side or my side. I can never tell which one.
I think it's my side, but I'm not sure.
Thank you for joining Seahawks, Brandon Nelson. Hawks Maniac 09. Thank you, Hawks Maniac. Says your pre-draft analysis was excellent. Go Hawks. Well, thank you, Hawks Maniac. Me and Brendan really wanted to work hard on this year. I know we both started last year. I think it started September. We started looking at these guys officially with you guys. I'm on the show and really getting into this, and we'll be doing it again this year. So, the process resets, Brendan. You just take your notebook and put it on the bookshelf for posterity, I guess, and open up a new one, page 1. Good news is we've already seen about 25 of these guys because the NIL going back. So we've already got a little bit of a stock on some of these guys moving into the future draft, which is kind of cool. Oh, yeah. We're ahead of the game. Ahead of the game, man.
At least a little bit. It helps.
A little bit, man. A little bit. Thank you, the Hawks Maniac. Appreciate you, and go Hawks. Daniel Bailey, thank you for the $2 donation as well. Says, could be like K9. He could catch just a few chances. This is in regards to AJ Barner. Sorry, a little late on that acknowledgement on the dono there. But that's my thinking with this. I could be wrong with it. It's just going back and seeing what he was doing with Ohio and having a guy like Penix, a little bit more of a higher volume passing attack, a little bit more of an opportunity to go out there and get your chances versus a Michigan team that you would be the first guy that's, really talented guy that just gets on a really good team that just doesn't get the kind of productivity because there are so many good guys. The program is well stocked.
Yeah, I don't think he'll ever be like a downfield passing threat, though. I don't think he's ever going to be like a big play guy, somebody who goes over the middle with a he doesn't have the attributes for that clearly, but he is probably capable of being a chain mover, at least something like that.
Yeah, I think he's to your point. I don't think there's a guy with a huge monstrous upside. Can he become a Will Disley type? Can he round in that kind of player? Yeah, I can. I think he can. So that would be, to me, again, that's tremendous value back in the fourth round. You're getting that kind of player, and gives them that insurance for next year, flexibility for next year when they got to come to make some decisions, because I think that's going to be when John Schneider, Brendan, wants to be really aggressive. And that's where the money on the books is, where you can peel away to then go get aggressive if you want to in other areas. And I think that's going to prove to be potentially a really intriguing option for John. We'll see on that.
Mm-hmm.
See on that. I also think next year is the year, Brendan, we might start to really, I've said not once on my doing this since we started, that we're going to trade up for a quarterback. I think next year is the year. You're really looking at that likelihood to come up.
Yeah. I mean, how do you think the quarterbacks are going to be ranked by the time we get to that process? Because you've got Sanders, you've got Ward, you've got Ewers, and then you've got Carson Beck. Those would probably be your top four.
Have you looked at Beck yet? I haven't.
A little bit. I'm not super into it. I got to be honest.
That's what I was hearing. That's what I'm hearing. My feel on this, with just a complete gut instinct, is Sanders and Ewers are your first rounders. Don't know if it's a 1-2 situation, and then you got Ward as a maybe fringe first rounder, if he can really like. But that, man, Cristobal's offense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not ideal. Hold on, let me see here. Did I forget any of the big names in next year's QB class? Milroe, the Alabama guy, really not impressed with him.
No.
Oh, here's one of my guys, Riley Leonard. He's going to come out next year. I like Riley.
He's intrigued. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They might hold him back as just maybe a lack of big arm puts him more into like second round place, I think. But he's got the mobility, he's got the moxie, he's got the decision making. I like it.
Yeah, I think that would work pretty well. So I don't know if we're going to need to trade up for the quarterback, but it depends on who he falls in love with. I don't know if Schneider would be a Shadur guy. I think he is a Ewers guy. We can say that pretty confidently.
John doesn't strike you as prime time. He doesn't want prime time in that. You don't want the prime time energy in here.
Yeah, I'm not feeling that one. Jackson Dart, I guess, could be another guy who gets coveted, but I'm not crazy from what I've seen of him either.
What about Tyler Van Dyke?
I gave up on him 2 years ago. I don't know what's going to change now.
No. KJ Jefferson.
He's going to be in college when he's 38.
Still
getting that NIL money.
And then there's the other guy who's on his third program, DJ Uga Legelele.
Oh yeah,
he's on his third one too now.
Yeah,
so he's
just figure it out one day.
One day he's big. He's big with a big arm, Brendan. He's big with a big arm. Well, let's keep it motoring through this draft here. So we get into the final pick for the Seahawks, a pick that you'd mentioned about earlier, and the one guy that I had done so good in this draft, where I was like, I know all these guys. And then we get to this pick and I go, I don't know this guy. So we go for the young man out of Findlay College. And,
are we just saying that we DJ James we already talked about because of he was part of the
I totally see this. I'm still half sick, folks. Bear with me here. So yeah, I did forget about DJ. We went back one other cornerback. Sorry about that. Let's go in there. DJ James, who we get in the late fifth, right? On that one.
No, he was actually a sixth rounder. We had three sixth rounders. Right. Yeah,
he was one of the early sixth rounder. We can go back and get DJ James of Auburn, another cornerback, another really hyper athletic, fast guy. Brendan, what do you think of this pick? Were you as high on DJ as you were on Nehemiah?
I liked Nehemiah more, but I definitely viewed James as being good value. He is very small. He's very small, probably going to be slot only in the NFL. 6 feet tall, but only 175 with 31-inch arms. So if you ask him to play on the outside, I mean, we are seeing some shorter armed corners out there these days, it feels like. And obviously the long arm love affair was more of a Carroll thing than it was necessarily an NFL-wide thing. But I would still expect him to probably be a slot guy. He's got pretty good speed, good acceleration. Had really good ball production the last 2 years. 18 passes defensed over the last 2 years. Good ball skills, should be flexible across man and zone, just like Pritchet was. High football IQ. I like him in zone, being able to diagnose plays as he's looking at it. Good tackler too. Unlike Pritchett, I think he's a pretty good tackler for his size. Now, obviously, he's not taking on Derrick Henry one-on-one at 175 pounds, but I think he does all right for himself. I think he gets tricked a lot. He bites down hard on eye candy, bites down hard on fakes and misdirection. His play speed doesn't quite match his straight line speed. He's not going to be shedding any blockers because he's so small as well. So when he gets stuck on a blocker, he's probably just stuck. And again, he's just small. So probably going to be a little bit limited. Like in college, he played on the outside and played fine. I don't think you're getting away with that in the NFL. Yeah. So I like him. I put him in like the 4th or 5th round. You got him in the 6th. I think that's pretty dang good. The ball skills alone, I think, make him a intriguing player. I just don't know what role he's going to be able to occupy.
Yeah, I likewise here again, just another right at 5th round grade, get him early 6th, good value. I think your evaluation's about right. I did like the speed and quickness that was there with him. I do agree with you where you go to this slot. The thing I like, I'm okay with the short arms if we think about the guy as being, because it wasn't in the back of the day, you just didn't like to think of a guy being a full-time slot. It was like a mark of, you being a crappy corner or something. Now it's grown to be a thing that's a normal thing. Look at these receivers, Brendan, in recent years that we've looked at as being slot-only guys. I mean, even I think JSN we could put into this role. Don't they all tend to be about 31 1/4 arms or something like that? Like Puka wasn't Puka. Like they're all kind of like, they're not necessarily coming in the slot with the 33 longers, nor are they coming in there usually at 6'3", 6'4". So you're not really having to be as worried, I think, about the size stuff inside on that. As long as they're kind of willing and, and the problems you mentioned with the run game, though, are there. And he's got some atrocious moments on tape when it comes to dealing with the run. And a lot of times comes from his lack of size, but gives you some flexibility in the slot. You didn't have anybody in there really, Brendan, if you think about it. If Kobe Bryant's truly going to safety, you got Artie Burns, you got Devin Witherspoon there. Who else was going to be the guy in this roster to go in the slot as it currently stood coming into this?
Yeah, I mean, I suspect it would have been Spoon, but after that, it depends. Like a lot of people think Trey Brown should play slot, but I don't think he's ever really done it. It's all just kind of based on how small he is, right? Like people look at him and think he looks like a slot. I don't know if he is a slot. Kobe was not very good in the slot, and I don't think his skill set is good for the slot anyway. I think we put him there because we didn't have any other solution.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you boil it down, Julian Love probably plays some snaps in the slot. Most safeties do. He's pretty decent in that role, I guess. It's not bad to stack up at that spot a little bit beyond what we had. I think so. I'm good with it.
Yeah, I am as well, because of that. I think it's giving Spoon some flexibility to be able to move around the defense and do some variety things rather than, well, he's got to be our slot. And like, oh, is that to getting the most out of Spoon when he can kind of go to so many areas? And I know with McDonald, he's going to have that slight pull a little bit to go, hey, what about we get him out here? Maybe let's give him some strong safety snaps. Let's get him. Make sure we keep him completely freed up of blocks on this with the alignment, and kind of like that, giving him a little bit more free range on Witherspoon to kind of let him roll. What was your round grade you had on him? I'm sorry.
I put him in the 4th or 5th, somewhere right around there.
All right. So nice. So the Hawks are having, outside of the Barner and the Tyrese Knight pick, and he hadn't had a chance to see Sataoa. Good value though so far on the other side of the picks outside of those from your perspective. Fair to say?
Yeah, I do think Barner was a bit of a reach, but again, I think reaching in the 4th round is a pretty small. It's small potatoes compared to reaching in the early rounds. It's a world of difference, and to a certain extent, I think every organization earns at least a couple of I just like him picks a year. Like you're gonna, you attack with value in the first 3 rounds, and then you get to day 3 and you're like, okay, I'm gonna go get the guys that I like. I don't care if anyone else likes them. I don't care if the consensus says I should like him this much. I'm just going to make sure I get him. So I can live with that.
And if it is that kind of guy, Brendan, I do like it when it's like, okay, I get one thing I know comes in the door, right? I don't get maybe the complete player, but he's bringing this like one skill thing into the door with him, and I do like that. Could be a receiver, like, okay, he's not really going to have a lot of ability to run the full route tree, but he can get deep and he's going to catch it deep, and he's a problem if you get him deep, or maybe it's a free safety. It's a ball hawk like that guy for the Ravens last year that can take the ball away, but he can't he ain't gonna tackle for nobody,
Oh,
nothing.
Stone. Yeah,
Yeah,
Stone.
Stone. He's gonna be like Geno Stone, where it's like, I don't want to tackle at all. Well, at least you get something on those. You feel a little bit
Right.
more decent about. Well, let's dive into the last guy here, as I prematurely almost jumped the gun on that. And we've got this tackle out of Finley. Where I know you hadn't had any chance to see any tape. I don't know much of what we can.
Actually, I'm going to push back on that.
Oh, you did?
There's a video on YouTube
I
that
did see it.
has been uploaded. It's got like 75 snaps from him or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen a little bit.
Okay. So in retrospect of seeing it, what did you what do you think on this guy? As you said, you kind of broke it down at the top of this. That it's kind of, at this point, that's where you should make these kind of picks. But as the player, what do you think of him and what you've seen? Obviously, it's gonna be good because he's out there mauling accountants and lawyers.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard, right?
It
looks
so
fine. The thing with the Jerrel, more so than the tape, because the tape is kind of meaningless, right? Like I'm not gonna learn anything from that tape. Not really. It's not even, it's like a level below. It's not even Appalachian State that he's playing for. It's not even UTEP. It's not even like what is Finlay?
It's not even Ivy League, right?
Yeah,
it's even below the Ivy.
Yeah, it's like would they even be able to beat a JV squad from a regular college?
Depends. Southern College? I don't know. Georgia, I don't know. Probably Georgia. Give him a run. Yeah.
What I can tell you is that he is one of the most athletic offensive linemen I've ever seen. His testing numbers are completely insane. Ran a 4.94 40 at 309 pounds, which is 98th percentile, and 1.69 10-yard split, which is 95th percentile. Also 32.5-inch broad, which is 93rd percentile. So it's legit. Like he is a great athlete, a special athlete. But then you ask yourself, okay, if he's such a great athlete, why didn't any of the bigger colleges recruit him? And it's because like even the Finlay tape doesn't look that great. He doesn't look. You turn on the tape and you'd expect to see like Babe Ruth playing against a little league team. It's not really. It's there's some good stuff, but there's also some bad stuff too. And talk about culture shock going from playing the teams that he's playing at Finlay to playing against NFL players. So hopefully we can stick him on the practice squad. Hopefully he can make it through. Obviously, someone in this organization really likes him. Somebody was willing to die on this hill, because there's no universe where Jerrel deserved to get drafted in a vacuum.
Well, it definitely is hard to figure. And he supposedly said that he had offers last year coming out. Whether he did, I don't know or not, but that he did the loyalty thing like Quinyon Mitchell did, where he stayed with Toledo, but he had other offers. I don't know if that's the case. I think it's a little different in Quinyon, where you're like, you'll be drafted at Toledo. That's taking a gamble there with Finlay going, Finlay hasn't turned any NFL players out. You might be kind of wrecking your ability to even get picked here. Yeah. I love the belief in yourself, but if that's go to a program where you can at least get a little bit of spot shine for yourself to show out. He had some spots he did dominate, Brendan. When I look at if you look at the guys he's going against, though, look at their bodies and look at how they're moving, and you're just going, this is nowhere near the top of the competition. So I do think he's got some athleticism that shows on film. I think his feet, the way his feet moved, he's got kind of those typewriter feet where a lot of those linemen it gets very heavy, and everything with him it's kind of got a little pitter patter to it, which I like, is maybe a little bit of that bouncy athleticism that can come back into play as he kind of comes to Seattle. And he looks the part. He's got the nice long arms. He had to have over 33, right?
It was 33 and 7/8. It's almost It's just barely shy of 34. So he looks the part, 100%.
95th, 96th percentile, something like that, probably. Yeah, in that range. So he definitely is. And I'm with Brett, like Brendan said earlier on this. You're going to take a risk in a draft, and you're going to go for a guy. And it's either one where you get a guy like Kenny McIntosh last year that just falls to you at the end of the seventh. You're like, what is everybody doing here? All right, let's grab him. Or a guy like this is a project that hits for you. Brendan, we've had stories through the years, have we not, of guys that were late converts. He was a basketball player that became this, or he's small school this, and that have come out to find careers in the pros. What's a guy like Joe Staley with the Niners kind of like that a bit. But it feels like there's been some of these guys that have come along through the years that have found their way to I'm not predicting it with this kid, but when you are a great athlete like that, and if he is a hard worker, which it sounds like he is, then you got the goods there to kind of put together to make it happen if it is going to happen.
Yeah, hopefully you can get him on the practice squad without him getting sniped. I'll say that because I don't think there's room for him on this roster.
No.
And I don't think you want to put a guy like this on the roster who has a lot of work to do. Like, I think that his fundamentals of playing the position, even on the level that you would expect for a 6th round pick, is lacking. So it's probably going to take some time. Maybe you could call him like the Reek Woolen of offensive lineman prospects, right? He's got all these measurables, all this potential, but there's stuff that needs to be fixed.
Maybe he comes in and lights it up and the team moves Stone Forsythe for a 6th or something.
I think Forsythe might be gone either way, but I don't think he'll be making room for Jerrel. Oh. And we might talk about the guy I think maybe will be taking that job in the UDFA portion.
That's a bold statement, Cotton. Bold statement. Owen Carter has been celebrating 1 month as a member of the Seahawks. Brennan Nelson, I'm going to guess on Owen. Says, how much do you see the defense improving this year? Well, it's a great question, Owen. Complicated question to answer a little bit from my perspective. What you got on that one, Brendan, from your perspective?
I think it's probably going to get a little better than league average, not by a ton or anything. I'm not expecting anything over the top. Still don't love our linebacker room completely. Still not in love with our safeties. So I think that middle area is a little bit rough, but the defensive line should be much improved. We've made a significant investment there, and it doesn't look like they're going to move off of Draymond. So we should be very deep there as well. There's still time for them to, in theory, but I'm starting to get the sense they won't. And I actually like that. I'd rather just see what I can get out of this.
They're just become a diminishing point return. We're talking about eating dead money just for the sake of eating dead money at that point. Like, what are we really gaining here versus waiting a year to do it?
So I'm going to say somewhere around league average. It's going to take a while to pick everything up. I think it's kind of like that first year we hired Waldron, and it was looking like it was going to be way different than previous offenses. I said, this is going to take some time to get right. And it kind of did. Now it kind of never got right because the quarterback OC combo didn't make very much sense. And it only got right when we had a different quarterback the next year. But I'm kind of expecting something similar to what I expected then, which is this is going to take a little bit of time. The ideal would be it gets going by the end of the season and we can get into the playoffs and actually do something, which I think is reasonable to expect that by the end of the year, things are going.
Yeah, I think you touch on where I think this hopefully finishes up at, and that's really where we talk about this first season being successful. It's, can the defense finish stronger and show it's on the road by the end, as much as can it go out there and be elite this year? Looking through the Seahawks history at coaches taking over for other coaches, Knox taking over, or Holmgren taking over, or Carroll taking over. Even on these guys like with Carroll that didn't have necessarily the most complicated scheme to institute, you still got to get your guys. You still got to get the guys that are buying in. You got to get everybody on the same page. All these places sort of took that first year to kind of just take a look at what's going on. Holmgren didn't just come in and flip everything over. He kind of took what he had, inherited it, read it, and then changed off of it a year into it. So I think that's going to happen here a bit, where you just have Mike doing some experimenting, seeing what he's got, seeing where guys stand, see who's really going to ride with him on this team. And that's going to take some time to get that all kind of fleshed out. But can they finish stronger, Owen? I think Brendan's right. Middle of the road is a good place to look at. This is a team that's been back in for a couple of years now. So to get to the middle of the road state by the end of the year, I think is a great barometer for success with this defense. That'd be a good job on his part. They got the talent to do it. No doubt about that now, where maybe in previous years they haven't as much talent to quite get to that spot on top of the scheme problems. But that's where I would see it as well. I think certain things that we want to look to see improve as well as tackling getting better. Can they get off the field more, effectively, efficiently, rather than letting these slow bleed, drives that constantly kind of take away momentum and just keep our offense in a place and not really finding momentum on the other side of it. And those little things as well in addition to it. But overall, It'll be improved. It's going to take a little bit more time than some Seahawks fans, I think, are seeing their own. There were some people like, we're going to be top 5 next year. We're going to be this. And it's going to take a little bit more time on this to get this in. You're muted.
Sorry about that. I always tell people, don't set yourself up for disappointment because it's going to make you resent people that you don't need to resent. It's same thing with Byron Murphy to me. It's like I see all these people. I still see them all over the place in my comments, in the Discord, on Facebook, saying he's Aaron Donald, he's Jalen Carter, he's Cortez Kennedy. And I keep saying, like, if that's your expectation for him, you're going to end up resenting him because I'm telling you right now, I don't think he's any of those guys.
Mm-hmm. I get it. I totally get it. And I think that there's something to that too, Brendan, because this is where you also get people that get real angry when they don't see the results come out next year that fit to the expectation they're kind of supplying on that. And that's where that can, I think to your point, turn on that a little bit and not in the most healthy of fashions versus just letting this thing kind of develop and let's see where this thing all just kind of fully goes. But we should see improvement. Team was one of the back end defenses in all of football's past couple of years. I don't expect them to be that this year, Owen. So the improvement will be there, just not maybe yet to the elite stage of things. On the road, getting there, it could happen with the right twisted turn. But remember when Mike McDonald came to the Ravens, he was taking over a defense that was already running in pretty much for the majority of parts of it. This defense he was running, he was basically instituting just different, adjustments from that defense. But Wink was his mentor. So, this is a defense that now he's coming into and flipping this so simple from before to so complicated now. You can't figure that that's going to happen like a light switch really easily.
Yeah. My expectation would be that it's going to take a little bit of time, but it will be worth it. It will eventually be worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. If anything worthwhile usually is. It's got to take a little bit of time. So if it was easy and quick, every team would be doing it fast. So that's why I like everything they've shown this approach so far. Brent's been one. They've not been rushed or flushed here. They're taking their time and their approach throughout the season, from the coaching to how they're building this roster, and they're not pushing the cap on next year too heavily. Let's let this thing kind of play out as it needs to organically. Holy hand grenade, holiest hand grenade. Thank you for the $2 donation. People who want Adams back also want to trade DK. Supposedly, I heard a rumor today that Kansas City came knocking once again on their yearly. Can we have DK request?
Oh, really?
Seattle? Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one, but again, I'm going to say it again. What you would have to give up to make it worth our time with all that dead money, nobody's giving that up.
Yeah, we said throughout me and Brendan do not love the DK trade talk. We certainly aren't trying to push it, but we try to tell every person that would post in either of our chats and any of our live streams or when we're asked that, DK trade, this isn't going to happen. And people going, you don't know, it's not going to happen. And these kind of trades can come up. These kind of trades can happen, but it's not with the circumstances set as they are right now. And I just don't see as much an understanding of that there's anything the organization has indicated that they want to move on from DK, or that they don't trust in him being a vital part of what they're looking to do here long-term. There's not been one point John Carroll before that indicated that was anything but what their approach would be. And this is also why they rewarded the guy with the contract they did last time. So I think Seahawks fans would be better served rather than turning on, and I know you're not doing this whole hand grenade, but it's the general, like you said, there's people that are out there that are doing it.
Yeah.
Better served to look at celebrating DK and hoping for him to be here for the foreseeable future, rather than trying to look at every turn for how you can move off of him. Better appreciate what this guy is. He's having the best start to a Seahawks receiver of anybody in history, even above Tyler Lockett, who's going to be second all time, even I think right above Largent through his 5 years. So what are we doing here? What are we doing here when we're banging that drum for this guy over and over again from certain parts of the contingent of the fan base? You start to seem like a hater for a guy that's this good, this long on it. But we'll see what happens with it. It ain't happening this year, folks. I mean, Brendan been telling you about it for months. That's not happening. It certainly ain't happening now. So DK is going to be here next year. Enjoy it. Enjoy him.
Yeah. And if it does happen, you will probably see me on the fire John Schneider train very quickly after.
I certainly will.
At this point, it won't make any sense. After the draft, come on.
Yeah, it would be absolutely asinine to try to do that right now. And I would, not be happy to see it. Adams, we should probably approach this. I know you dropped a video on your channel today talking about, okay, rumors are this Seattle's interested in bringing back Jamal Adams potentially, and maybe he's interested in coming back. You kind of put the for what? I think that's pretty fair.
Yeah. If Jeremiah Trotter is too small to play linebacker for McDonald, then Jamal Adams definitely is. So I don't understand the linebacker thing. Like maybe he could be a linebacker on a defense that was okay with having a really undersized linebacker, but that's not this, I don't think. And you're just putting him in the firing line if you put him at linebacker at this point. His body can't hold up at safety. And I say all this as somebody who does think that Adams played okay last year. He had one really bad game, which was the Niners game, the last game he played. Other than that, I think he played okay. But is that like the upside here? Best case scenario, I get a player who's okay. And the downside is he might be really bad because his body's completely broken and he gets hurt again and he acts stupid off the field and makes the team look bad. It's like, what am I excited about here? I'm not seeing anything to be really excited about.
Are you buying into anything about the part? I'm not saying I think this, but just you buying into the part though that goes the injury that he had, the surgery he had, he may never well come back from. That may be the truth. In addition to that truth, he might be able to come back more this year from it, getting a second year to be able to train and rehabilitate back from the injury.
No, not really. I don't know. I get
it. I get it.
There's got to be somebody out there. There's got to be something out there better, right? Like I made a video the other day about how the compensatory pick stuff's off the table now. As of like 1 p.m. yesterday, compensatory picks would no longer affect anything with the with free agents. So you can sign anybody now with no consequences.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to sign somebody, there's got to be somebody out there better than Adams.
Well, I would think so. I also I don't know what the fit is here in the scheme. Mm-hmm. Let's address that part.
Yeah.
Your points about the linebacker. Let's not try to go too far in the linebacker stuff on Adams, folks. There's the small stuff Brendan just mentioned. There's the shoulder injuries he's had, which is a problem where that you got to take on more contact down around the line of scrimmage. Those shoulders are going to be more tested down around there. It just doesn't make sense. As a safety, he showed the last couple of years trying to do split safety stuff. When you ask him to do cover two shell or he's got to go single high, he's totally lost in the woods at that point. So you're still back to, okay, he's back a little bit better from the injury, but he still doesn't fit to the defense and what the defense really wants him to do, unless we're just going to run stack fronts and keep him up around the line of scrimmage and try to blitz him, not 24/7, but have him just down there as a attacking player down there in that way, Brendan. But that's the only way I could see them trying to make that happen, because I just don't see it as a positional fit, either linebacker or at safety.
Yeah, I can't make it make any sense. Like if you want to reunite with a safety, I'd much rather bring back Diggs. I think Diggs can still at least do some stuff well and isn't some over the top awful injury risk and would also probably be cheaper. I get the sense that one of the things with Adams is that he's sitting there waiting for somebody to give him a big deal and he doesn't understand why it's not coming, because in his mind, he's still great.
Yeah.
It's hard to go from that guy making, record-setting safety contract to, oh, I'm a little piddly vet minimum, no guaranteed guy. I think he hasn't mentally gotten to that point yet where he accepts that.
Could very well be. I think he could maybe still find a home here in the NFL. He could still maybe kind of bounce back a little bit, but he's got to go to the right place that's really going to use him the right way. And that's down as a box safety. There's still some defenses that can do some of that stuff. So go and be that is, I think, his best place. I don't even like him as a nickel guy, slot guy. I don't think that's good either. It's not the way to go, really, I would say. Mm-hmm. I'd rather be flying an X-Wing. I love that name. Thank you for the $5 donation. It says, thank you to both for the huge time and effort you put into this. Looks to me like the front office feels pretty good about Sam Howell. Thoughts?
I mean, if they didn't, they certainly shouldn't have traded for him. So there's at least some degree of admiration. As somebody who doesn't think that Sam Howell will ever be a starting caliber, like a good starting quarterback in this league, I don't. I don't see Sam Howell ever being a top 15 or 12 quarterback. I think having him around is still worthwhile. I think that there is a place in the world for a quarterback who can deliver better than average backup caliber play. And He could be better than I think. Absolutely. Like, why not? Like, I could miss on him the same way I missed on Desmond Ridder, right? I thought Ridder was going to be a really good player in this league, and he's not. So it's not a bad shot to take.
Quarterback's a tough position to evaluate. I'd rather be flying X-wing. That's why we see the best of the best. The first round quarterbacks find themselves with 2/3 of a failure rate. So it is far from an exact science in determining what's a good quarterback or who will be good or who will be bad or where the fate is of anybody is going to go. I have some disagreements with Brendan a little bit on this with Sam Howell, where I do see a guy that could eventually round into being a top 15, top 12 guy. I'm not saying I know he's going to get there, but I'm saying that if I put the supporting cast like we're starting to put together, coming out of the shadows and materializing, and you start to give him that kind of crew, I trust in the supporting cast theory. It's going to be my new theory that I'm going to start to really push forward here, being that if I give a good quarterback with a skill set with some mobility and an arm who can make all the NFL throws, the kind of supporting cast that we're about to potentially give a guy like this if he gets put in the lineup, I think that guy's got a good chance for success in this league. And I think that the quarterback success is much more driven by the supporting cast than the average fan, than the average national pundit that talks about quarterbacks over and over again really speak upon. I think it gets overlooked to a major degree. I'd rather be flying an X-wing. I really do. I think it's kind of the one blind spot right now that I see amongst my interactions with fans. It always just comes down to this quarterback. And I think with Sam Howell, this is going to be a good case study in this. The kid was 23 years old last year. You know, a lot of quarterbacks coming out in this class right now, 24, they were playing college football last year while this guy was in the pros playing on a team where he didn't have a whole hell of a lot set up for him to have success. And I know he went in the 5th round a couple years ago. I know the league's view of him is where it is going to be at. I know some people didn't think he had a good year last year, but he made some big time throws. He never shrunk, no matter how many times he got hit or smacked around that pocket last year. And he did everything he could to help his team go out there and win on a weekly basis. I like the kid's skill set. I still like his upside. I think you put this, the supporting cast around him that we might be doing here. And I think this is why they have the confidence to not go for Rattler or feel impelled to have to trade up in this draft. I think that was proof to what I'm talking about, because the question's about what John thinks here, Brennan. And that's what I think John thinks, is that what I'm saying right now is exactly what I think is what is in John's brain in regards to Sam Howell. Could be wrong, could be right. But I think that his actions here through this draft and his process of whatever dealing with any other quarterbacks have shown that this is where he stands with the kid. And I understand it. It makes the math adds up to me. It doesn't for most, I guess, on this, or a lot of folks on this. But from my perspective, it's like, yeah, it makes a complete sense on this.
Yeah. And, it's always possible. I don't think he's a terrible quarterback. He's not, there are quarterbacks out there that I would absolutely be completely shut down to the idea of them ever being good. He's not that. But it's a shot worth taking, and it's probably a better shot than most of the things you could have done at quarterback this draft. Mm-hmm. All the quarterbacks were gone by the time we picked. There was no opportunity to get any of them. And you could have gotten Rattler, but, I think it's pretty close between him and Howell, honestly. You could have gotten Travis. That may have been better, but he's also coming off the big injury. Who knows what he's going to be now. And that's what else was there? There was Pratt. There was Milton. Pratt, yeah. There really wasn't anything there that stands out as being clearly a better shot to take than Sam Howell.
I agree. That would be my thinking. I thought Howell would be is a prospect. I like him better. Part of what I like him better is even beyond just the evaluation out of him coming out of college, Brendan, but was last year in my outlook of what he did last year. I come back to it again and again, man. And if you take, we've unpacked it a bunch. I won't unpack it here again with you because I know we've talked about this a bunch, but from, the offensive line, skill position players, offensive coordinator, lame duck head coach, new ownership coming in, organization that hadn't won in many, many, many years. The mid-season trading of two of their more important defensive players. Not a lot was set up for success for him or anybody else who would have been in that situation. There was a lot there that was set up for a guy to fall flat on his face. And I'm talking 8 touchdowns, 24 interceptions kind of fall on his face. And he didn't do that. And that's where I came out of it going, that grew my evaluation of Sam Howell. It didn't tear it down further from where it had been with his draft pedigree. And I think that he's got something there that in doing what he did at 23 in that year, Brendan, I go back and look through quarterbacks, like what quarterbacks do we ever look at 23 years old going, yeah, I know what that, I'm not saying I know what Sam Howell's going to be. What I'm pushing back against, Brendan, and you're not saying this, but just what others are saying at times out there, which is, I know what he is. He's trash. He's garbage. When do we say this about a 23-year-old quarterback who, off a first starting year, throws for 4,000 yards, a 1-for-1 touchdown to interception ratio? It's a very rare thing I've seen in my history with us when we're looking at quarterbacks to come to these kind of stark conclusions this quickly on players. And that's all I'm just pushing back to me. It's like, let's give the plant a little more time to get the root to grow down, and let's see what the buds look like once they come up.
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff there. And again, it's whatever it is, it's not noticeably worse than what any second tier or lower quarterback in this draft would have given you.
Yeah.
Even on the age level, he's like the same age as most of those guys. Isn't he younger than Rattler?
Mm-hmm. Rattler's going to be, I think, 24 here in like days or something. So, or right there. I mean, very close. Younger than Milton. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, though, X-Wing. Appreciate you on that one. Roxanne Roll, thank you for the $5. I appreciate you for that. Says, what is the word on the UDFAs? I've only heard about Caesar thus far. Well, yeah, we're definitely getting into some of this UDFAs here in the show too. We've got Nelson Caesar. Do you have the full list up in front of you?
Yes, I think I do. I think this is the full list I got here.
I've got some guys too. So if you miss off yours, I might have some on mine here. So.
All right. Jack Westover was actually the first one. So I think we were on the phone with him the moment the draft ended. And it was
I think it was 6. I think, do you mind about it? We got out of the 7th round to get ahead of all the general managers with the UDFAs. So we could call them. They're all 7th round still dealing with their picks, Brendan. And John was like, I'll get ahead of them on this one.
Something like that, because I remember it was instant. I was recording my video right after the draft ended, and people in my chat started going, Westover. I was like, oh man, that must have been a really short phone call.
Oh yeah. I think they were. I think John literally is at thought, like, I know what I'm gonna do this year. He's like, I don't like any of the guys early in the 7th round way, and I think some of these guys will fall through as it is. So let's just start targeting those guys. Smart approach.
So that's a good one. Obviously, I think he'll at least make the practice squad if he can. Like if he doesn't get scooped, which I don't think he will. He didn't get drafted, so people don't like him that much. But yeah, Westover, Chevon Cordero, the San Jose State quarterback. Don't know anything about him. Boise State running back George Holani. That's a good one. We met with him. The only reason why he didn't go drafted seems to be because he gets hurt a lot, injury problems.
A combination of Chris Carson and Charbonnet a little bit with his skill set, including that injury thing, Brendan.
Right. Tamarick Williams, running back from North Dakota State. Don't know him.
Got nothing.
Oh, by the way, I think Holani makes the 53 man. We need a 4th running back. I think he's going to be the dude.
I agree.
Wide receiver Hayden Hatton of Idaho. He's actually pretty interesting.
He's got an uphill. I think practice squad potentially. I think a huge uphill battle to get on the squad though.
I agree with that. Garrett Greenfield, which I really like, the South Dakota State tackle. I had a 5th round grade on him, and he just kept falling. He's the guy who I think might take Forsyth's job.
Oh, bold statement. All right, let's go. I like it.
Yeah. And again, I want to say it's not like I think Forsyth was that bad last year. I just wonder if Grubb might not want a relatively immobile offensive lineman like that. He might look at Forsyth and go, he doesn't fit what I'm doing. And we can save $1 million.
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah, you get in that 3rd year, they start making a little bit more money. So you're right. That could be a part of what pushes this. Certainly, if George Fant's staying, so it's really he's not in the cut targets.
Mike Nowitzki and I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but that's how I'm going to pronounce it because I think that's cool. Nowitzki.
It's a center name.
Yeah, center from Kansas, and don't know much about him.
He's got. I watched a little on him today. Tons of starting experience. A little more he's better rated as a run blocker last year than a pass blocker, but a little bit better as a pass blocker than a run blocker as a center.
Nelson Caesar Houston, and this is who Roxanne mentioned in the chat. I had a 5th round grade on him, so it was great to get him in the UDFA portion. If Darrell Taylor doesn't make the team for one reason or another, Caesar might be the guy who takes that 4th edge role. Like, I think he might be good enough to get away with that.
Yeah, bro, folks, me and Brendan both had a 5th round grade on Nelson Caesar. So I also did with Westover too, by the way. I know you were more kind of I remember I liked Westover a little bit too. So these are two guys that in this UDFAs that you got in the 5th round that I had 5th round grades on. Caesar's got the ability to be a power edge too. Did you have a chance? And that's the part that I think where you talk about dislodging Taylor and where Taylor's really going to have an uphill battle here is setting the hard edge. Brent, they didn't draft a hard edge in this draft. That was the one thing that was missing a little bit, right? We thought that maybe they get the Brennan Jackson or maybe Darius Robinson at some point. You didn't get it. Here's a guy that might be able to come in and supply a little bit of that. I know Draymond Jones may be a possibility or two, but Darrell Taylor might have himself a little bit of a tough way to get through on this if that's going to be the case. This kid shows up and brings those skills.
Yeah, and then everybody else was someone I didn't know very much about pre-draft, but Devere Levelston, the defensive tackle from SMU, don't know him.
Don't know too much on him either.
Rayson Williams II, defensive lineman from Louisiana Tech, don't know him.
We did have a couple. You watched Rotorans, didn't you? Arizona State?
He was like the last guy I crossed off my list because I didn't have time.
Big 6'3" press corner, can still turn and burn at his size, which makes him unusual at 6'3", Brennan. But a little unusual too, because most of these corners I've been looking in this draft are, including even the Carlton Johnson, who I had a chance to look at as well. There was another UDFA of ours. Most of the corners who I've been looking at have spent the predominant amount of their tape. This is what made me lean into thinking that Mike, if we're looking for an indicator from this, not necessarily looking to drive to like, we're going to run press and then we're going to run man coverage off press. Like, most of these guys are off coverage zone guys. So there's still a little bit of that setup in what they're looking to do here. This was the one guy in Rotorans, though, was the big guy that was up there pressing a little bit different in his skill set. Have a chance to look at him. Carl Johnson gave up like 530 yards at Fresno State last year. So he was a completion machine in off coverage. Another, like Auburn guys, cover, drop bail, leave everything open in front of me. And I'll keep clean over the top, but Lord knows I can't cover anything underneath.
Yeah. There was Grambling State defensive end Sundiata Anderson.
Nothing on that one.
And the Wyoming linebacker Easton Gibbs. And Wyoming's been a little bit of a linebacker factory these last few years. They had Chad Muma. Remember him? I
did. Yeah. This is what drove me to go take a look at him too. Did you have a chance to look at Gibbs? I know it's early.
Very little.
And we'll try to, folks, we'll be looking at the film on these UDFAs, but it's 20 guys and it's right after the draft. So, we got to take some time. He's okay. He feels small to me, Brendan. He's 6 foot, 230 barely. Looks like he's almost 220 on the field. Just not real long. Straight line fast. Doesn't look like very laterally athletic. I don't think Gibbs, like Radigan, beats out Gibbs to me.
Yeah, I think the thing is Radigan's $3 million.
Oh,
as of right now. I think we might do the thing where we cut him and then bring him back on a veteran minimum deal. There's no way we can give Radigan $3 million.
You can't give him that. No, that's a vet minimum guy right there. So come on, Easton Gibbs. Come on, Easton. I didn't realize the $3 million was a play.
Yeah. What else? That's it for the UDFA signings. There were some rookie camp invites, but those guys are the long shots of the long shots. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time there.
What about the confidence on these corners, Brandon? Carlton Johnson, Ro Torrance, Jason Maitrey also signed, right? You got a team that's got Witherspoon and Woolen. They just draft 2 cornerbacks. They got Mike Jackson. There have been 3-4 years there. You got to go try to beat that guy out. Artie Burns, a former first-round pick in the house, in there as well. Like, you got to trust in your skill, because the whole thing of choosing the UDFA thing is you're supposed to try to choose teams that can, give you the opportunity to actually be able to stick on. It's like, it's going to be rough making this roster at the cornerback position if you're UDFA.
Yeah. A couple of them should sneak on the PS, though. Like Carlton Johnson could make the practice squad.
He could. So good. I mean, so good road turns. So that's the thing with all these corners in this draft, is that these guys it's not like there's going to be teams that like, oh, you should let that guy get away, because every team had their opportunity to get their guy in this draft. There was damn near 55, 60 corners.
Right.
OG, thank you for the $2 donation. I appreciate you. He says, is Jerrel athletic enough for future left guard?
Well, he's athletic enough. I don't know if that means he'll be able to do it.
He feels like a 300-pound guy on game day, kind of like, I don't know if like guard, you want 320-ish. He felt to me, and again, me and Brian got to see this kind of like cut up of fast clips that are hard to make. But the competition he's going up against the Seahawks OG is so bad that it's tough at times on certain reps. I was looking for that though. My takeaway was that this guy's more tackle, and that he just needs to remain out at tackle.
For whatever it's worth, at the combine or I can't remember if it was combine or pro day, he was 309.
Okay,
so it's within the realm of possibility he could play guard, but that's hard to really judge. I almost kind of feel like you have to start from square one with him and like really try to figure out what can he do, if anything.
Yeah, well, and if he's already kind of like, well, he's partially there with left tackle, and we got to take him all this way to get him up there, versus we got to take him back to square one at left guard, just keep him at tackle at that point. To me, because there may be some upside there at tackle with him refining out that stuff. So I just didn't see enough natural bend, and the guy's got to get down a little lower, and you have a little bit of that to them. But Seahawks OG, like the Barton kid out of Duke, you saw him play left tackle, but he would really flex those hips and roll those hips low, and when he's getting down, you go, oh, that guy could slide into left guard. With this guy, he's more up and leaning down on his length, and the highlights you see with him, where it's not trying to just win with leverage, but just kind of push guys out with the length and the size he's got on him, which he can get away with because he's dealing with guys that aren't very good athletes out there at Findlay. Going up against Derek Young's old college, Brennan. Denor.
Going up against future insurance salesmen.
Doctors and lawyers.
Yeah. The old joke was milkmen, but I don't think there are enough milkmen these days.
No, I think milkmen's probably zero milkmen left in the U.S. I would estimate.
I know there are some because I see the milk trucks sometimes, but it's not what it used to be.
No, I hear references to milkmen now, and it seems to mean something completely different too. So even the term itself seems to be referencing something completely different than what it used to. Thank you though, Seahawk OG. I appreciate you for that. John M429, thank you for the $10 donation. I appreciate you for that, John. Very kind of you. He says, I loved the Byron Murphy pick, but I'm not over the top calling him Donald. Just want to see him and Jaron Reed or Hankins and Leo in the field together. I think our new D line can be formidable. Let's go.
Yeah, and that's totally the right philosophy to have here. I think I've had to tell people, like, if you guys expect this guy to be a Pro Bowler as a rookie and get 10 sacks like Donald did, and then win Defensive Player of the Year 3 out of 4 years, and have some first ballot Hall of Fame career. All these things, by the way, I'm describing Aaron Donald literally. I'm not pulling this stuff out of nowhere.
No,
like you're going to be disappointed, and I don't think that's good. I think that you're better off having the right expectations here and being happy that those expectations are met, because I do think he's going to be somewhere between Grady Jarrett and Geno Atkins.
Yeah. And again, to come back to Brendan, you're bringing this up for very proper reasons, because you do this and you have interactions down the line that you're anticipating. And those interactions will come out with me and Brendan talking to people that, the first game, Byron Murphy doesn't go out and have a sack and a half and 5 tackles. And, we should have freaking traded up and gotten a quarterback. We should and that's where you get the premature wanting to then, label these guys as being failures or bust, when you got to let them have their chance to develop, let them be the player they're going to be. And man, comparing them against a guy like Donald, that all-time best 3-tech that sports ever seen, maybe is just, that's too much. That's too much. I will say I'm going to be doing I did get a comp that came to me that I'm not going to say right quite yet, but I have a comp that's come to me, Brendan, that's not going to make your job any easier on tapping the brakes on this, because I do have one that came to me that's an old school one that I'm going to put together from a video for the future on Murphy that came to me. I finally had one light bulbing on me that I think you might like, but I'm not going crazy town with Donaldville Hill. Okay. It's not Donaldville, but it's maybe a little crazy town nonetheless, but I'm going to have some fun with it, because he started to remind me as I was going back and watching Murphy again. I was like, this guy kind of was a little bit like that too with that. So I love where you're coming from, John. The point of this last couple of years is to rebuild this defensive line. Why has the defense been bad? Why have we stopped against the run? There's been some issues in tackling, discipline, not a great scheme, but also because you don't have the trenches put together to be able to do it. If you guys can't hold up and keep themselves from being pushed off the ball on a continuous basis, or the depth to call upon when your frontline guys are tired, as has been the case many times over, this is what you run into. Instead, they've bit by bit rebuilt this back up, from Draymond Jones signing to what he can give you both inside, outside, the Big Cat trade and what he brought. To draft you Byron Murphy now, getting Jaron Reed back into the nose tackle position. And he showed you last year he can roll within there, back to his origin story, back to his traditions, some development from Cam Young, some development from Mike Morris, what we got working with the other edge prospects. There's something here that's working now. It's got to come together. The youth's got to grow. But you put the talent there that's been missing so heartily in the past, Brendan. How many times do we go back to 2018? You and I look at the front four, and we're just like, is this maybe there's so much more feeling certainty to this group and less like, well, if this happens and if this explodes and that goes this way, and it's like remember that old board game they have? It was like the mouse game where you have to set up and hit the thing. You go tink tink tink. It goes, this is old school, Brendan. I go,
I remember that one. I never had it, but I do remember it.
You have to go through 18 things to like perfectly. That was your old defensive line back in the day, and now you got actually a group that can just keep rolling out of rotation theoretically. So it'll be cool to see them together. You can see how the plan works here, John. How all these parts work together to make this line work as a whole, which is cool too. It was always hard. Sometimes it's hard to see what the plan was, wasn't it, Brendan?
Yeah. I mean, and that works on multiple different levels as well. You also had like, it felt like, I think there was this guy on X who put it this way during a Seahawks game last year where he was like, feels like these defensive linemen have never played with each other before today. Like they're all going out there and doing their own thing. There's no like plan. There's no, I'm going to stunt this way. You're going to twist this way. And this guy's going to go through for a unblocked sack or anything like that. It's just four guys trying to get to the quarterback, and that's about it.
Yeah, I agreed. I think that's an accurate assessment. That's what I saw as well over and over at times. So it's a good group, John. I thank you for the donation, and I'm really stoked for where they're taking this defense. We're going to slowly put this together, but they're putting it together in the right fashion. And you're buying, by the way, what I'd be selling if I was to say, if we don't make the trade of Leonard Williams, the second round pick to the Giants, Leonard Williams probably is not re-signing in Seattle.
I mean, probably. I guess he could have, but that would require a lot of things to go the right way. Whereas in this case, you needed a lot less things to go your way because he's already there and he's like, I'm already here. I already bought a house here. I already live here. Okay, let's go. Let's do it. Like, I don't think he would have re-signed with the Giants because the Giants are a dumpster fire, but maybe he decides I want to stay on the East Coast.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll sign with the Ravens or something. I don't know.
Or a team trades from at the deadline and he ends up going there and likes them. A team like the Rams come in, we'll do a trade for you. I like LA. I went to USC. I'll stay here. I'll chill. So I think that's just kind of a side thing there, Brendan. But thank you again, John. Appreciate you for that. Herman Gambos says, thank you for the $1 donation. He says, I'm just here to show my support. Go Hawks. Well, thank you, Herman. Appreciate you for that support. Very kind of you, man. Very kind of you. Power Hitter 427 has been celebrating a year as a Hawks Nest or Seahawks Brendan Melson member. Thank you for that, Power Hitter. He says, the fan base obsession with trading DK is annoying.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
I mean, whether or not we agree with it, whether or not we think philosophically it makes sense, which we don't, we both don't like it. We also can't make it work mathematically either. You would think that people would be kind of over it once they realize it doesn't save you any money. Like the dead money hit is identical whether he's here or not.
Mm-hmm.
But no, that doesn't seem to do much of anything to distill the like. It
almost makes him say yes more, doesn't it? For some reason.
Yeah, for some reason it's like that. It's like I don't know, and I think this goes for a lot of different things. It's like this grass is always greener thing. The stuff that we have can't possibly be that good, and the stuff that we don't have has to be really good.
Yeah,
it's the same thing we see with somebody like Geno Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think a surprisingly high percentage of Seahawks fans would say they would rather have Baker Mayfield than Geno Smith, which I think is complete lunacy. Which I think is ridiculous to even suggest. I think a lot of them would say they'd rather have Ryan Tannehill than Geno Smith, like current Ryan Tannehill, which I think is complete lunacy.
Yes.
But I think a big part of it is just we have Geno, so we know he's no good. And this thing that we don't know about has to be better because we don't have it. That's all I see when I hear that stuff.
Yeah, me as well. I think you make a good point about there's some comparisons there with the lack of genome appreciation at times and the want of the DK trade thing that comes up at the same time. It's something that's wore me out through the year. I got to a point on my channel near the end of the season. Power was like, you can bring up DK trade. I'm just going to ignore you in the chat if you mention it because I've covered what I've got to cover there. It's not happening. Why cover something that has no chance of happening? And then they push, but no, they're going to try to get a quarterback. That's the way they get it. No, it makes no sense to do it.
Yeah.
It's not coming.
Yeah. And Brady Henderson and several others have already shot down the Penix trade theory. In fact, Brady Henderson said he's pretty confident they would not have drafted Penix at 16 if he was there. So he doesn't think we liked him that much, which is I'm not surprised by. I don't think Penix is a John quarterback.
Well, and it comes down to Grubb too a little bit with that, where if Grubb's to John going, he's fine, but wouldn't want to put my career on this, or I'm not banging the tail for him like that necessarily. He should be a quarterback in this league, but we can maybe think about this down the line. It's the thing you also had in the room that nobody else had here in this situation, and you hear about Atlanta, like supposedly they went to the outdoor at the facility or something. It was windy and he was like throwing, frozen ropes in the wind, and they were like, oh, we can, so it was like, he kind of sold them on a private workout there a little bit. Yeah. I do like Penix though still.
Yeah. I mean, I like him marginally, right? I don't dislike him. I don't think he's a bad prospect. I think that Atlanta situation is pretty good for him.
I do too.
I think that's a situation he could have success in, if not for the fact that he's probably not going to have an opportunity to play for a couple of years. There's a very good chance that he just sits on the bench for 2 full seasons, maybe more. And that's, he'll be making plenty of money, right? He's making way more money here than he would have if he had gone to some team in the 20s.
I think it's a really good thing that he actually, I know this is not a popular, and I'm glad you're kind of where I'm at with it a little bit, because you hear endlessly just being paraded online with all the opinions out there, even locally, a little bit of that. This is the worst. This is the horrible. This is awful for Michael. This is awful for Kirk. This is awful for everybody. And I go like, I can understand that why Atlanta did it. I don't think it's the worst thing for Kirk, for Michael. Okay. So he's a little older prospect. It's not going to benefit him to sit a year or two behind a really good quarterback like Cousins and learn. And we been shown over and over in recent years when quarterbacks have the opportunity to sit and learn that does them favors, and that they actually can look really good at benefiting from that chance of having his hands sit and learn, so he's not going to throw for 75,000 yards in his career. Can he still go out there and have a crazy good career? Can he still go there and be a Hall of Famer if he starts 2 years from now? Yeah. Cause we've seen other quarterbacks do it. Rodgers sat for 3 years before he got a chance to play. So I don't think it's the worst thing, and I don't trust Kirk Cousins is necessarily going to stay upright over the next 2 years either, Brendan. I think there's a good chance you're going to be calling upon this kid.
I trust him to stay upright more than I trust Penix to stay upright.
No, that's a bold statement. I don't think so. I mean, I certainly think Penix got some questions about this stuff, but man, with Cousins coming off that injury, he was getting beat up quite a good amount out there in Minnesota, and he's not getting any more mobile. He's not getting away from those hits any more quicker as we go into the future.
Yeah, but I mean, Penix still has the 4 massive injuries in his college career. And the only reason why he didn't get hurt again in Washington is because we built an offense where he almost never got hit. That's what I saw out there. Like the national title game when Michigan was hitting him, he did get hurt, and he stayed out there because, he was trying to win a national title. You don't want to come out of a game, but he was hurt. He clearly was broken, and he was just forcing himself to stay out there. So I really, really wonder how his body holds up to an NFL beating, because you're not going to be able to build an offense where your quarterback never gets hit in the NFL. No, but you can certainly do things to set up a great supporting cast and mitigate the times that he gets hit and how much he's getting hit. It's something you can't protect him 100%, but you can definitely pull him back from having to get demolished on a weekly basis. And that Atlanta line, he goes in, they've got the ability to pass protect. They're going to run the ball. They're going to be balanced. So he's not going to have to go back there and throw 45 times if he does drop back. Again, why I kind of like that as a potential landing space there for him. But it's going to be an interesting situation there with that Atlanta with Cousins in there and how that all works. Mm-hmm. I'm interested to see what happens.
Yeah. Herman, thank you for another $10 donation. I appreciate you for that, Herman, on top of the early one. This is a question for both of you. How can the Hawks improve the team? Any players on the radar? Well, it's a great question, since we did have the compensatory period has come over here now, Brendan, where you can sign a player that's a free agent who would have factored back in the compensatory system, who will not factor now. Of course, it's going to be hard for the Hawks as it stands, because of the fact that They have pretty much used up all their functional cap space. But
Mhm.
let's just say cap isn't really a part of this, Brendan. Is there a guy that, stands out to you on this one that might be somewhere where they look?
If they don't feel like any of the guys they have can move over to the left guard, like if they don't think that Haynes and Sataoa and Bradford are going to be able to do it, I would honestly just cut Tomlinson and go get Dalton Risner. At least Risner can kind of move. Tomlinson couldn't move 10 years ago. He really can't move now. At least Risner's relatively young, and he's honestly, even though he wasn't really that good last year, he was probably better than Tomlinson. So that would be kind of my play. He was somebody who became a free agent naturally, so he would have cost a compensatory pick, but now he doesn't. So I understand why people were holding out on him, but that would be kind of where I'm looking. Let me see what else. There were some linebackers out there, but I didn't see anything that I thought would be better than what we had by that much. I mean, maybe you want to upgrade from a guy like Radigan to Quan Alexander, the guy who always just kind of lingers around in free agency every
Yeah.
year.
He's so old and the vet minimum is so pricey. We're hoping to get Rad to get back on a vet minimum. I think he's got to be up over the 2 million mark on a vet minimum deal to Quan at this point.
That's true. That's true. But I know that if we sign him late enough, they will actually give you a break on the veteran minimum. They'll actually basically part of it gets subsidized where you pay him, but it doesn't count against the cap. That's what we did with Mario Edwards last year.
Okay.
Something like 20% of his cap hit didn't actually come off our cap.
Okay. Well, that'd be good. Yeah, I think it's hard here too, Brent. We're really Herman pretty stocked to the nines. Brendan mentions linebacker. There's some maybe holes there. I mean, obviously defensive line, you got nothing there. There's nobody off the edges I would look to at this point. Corners, we have 15 corners on the roster, so we're not really going to find anything else out there that's going to help us out past where we're at there. So it's pretty well across the board Herman set. If they wanted to really maybe go, man, we didn't think this guy would be available at this time, and we can go get him. He doesn't count as an offshoot. If you wanted to maybe bring in a guy like Justin Simmons, who has a history of playing in the cover 2 shell look and doing a variety of things, his play's really fallen off in recent years, but he's not going to cost very much at this point. So it depends on where the team's evaluation would be on him, but that'd be the only kind of guy that I think it would really make any kind of potential sense. Most of the moves, Herman, on this one, just you've already kind of the hay's in the barn a little bit on how you put this team together so far. And even with available guys that are out there, it's like with the little cap space you have to spend and how well the positions are all put in place, just don't know there's a real fit.
Yeah, we are going to be fighting for our lives just to keep the players that we have. I've talked about this before, but you're going to probably have to dump Taylor and save the 3.1. You might have to dump Jackson. You're probably going to have to do something with Radigan. And even still, you might need to do something like restructure Metcalf or restructure Geno or something. So I don't know how we're going to add on when we are going to struggle just to keep what we got.
Yeah, we're already looking some acrobatics from the cap standpoint here, Herman. So that's also the other part of it is just there's not the money anymore. They shot the wad a little bit. Lake and Tomlinson deal was like $4 million, I think, and they did the guarantee deal to Laviska Chenault. None of these were big deals. Just a lot of these kind of started to add up after a while as you got closer to the draft, and just it pecked away that cap space down to almost nothing.
Yeah, the Tomlinson deal ended up being a lot less than that. Most of it's incentives, so we at least got a little bit of a break there. But even still, you've got work to do. Like Eskridge is probably gone, Forsyth is probably gone, and Taylor. And now the good news is they have to do it. So we know they must have a plan. Like they know that they need to do some work to get under the cap, and maybe this will be one of the years where you don't really have any buffer for the season. Because some teams do that. I think the Rams a few years ago when they won the Super Bowl went into the season with like $2 in cap space.
We'll find a way. Yeah. It's certainly, and you do have a way of like, even if you're in that $2 buffer, you can always do the conversion to the base of a DK or something like that. If it, like you really had to, you could find a way to, create the room somehow or another if it did get tight like that. But I think you're right about the team taking this kind of approach of, we sort of spent our money. We've done what we came to do, with this year and this being kind of a wait and see year too. This isn't a year where we're like, we're going for it. We're on the edge of being elite. Like, well, we're going to kind of want to, see and assess. I think that's more of the call of order right now. And that does mean probably more of just, okay, done. We got everything done. Stage is set. Every mini camps are set. Let's start this process of evaluating what we got. Thank you though, Herman. Appreciate you. That's a great question too, as well. I don't know if there's any other way to improve the team at this point. It's probably wait and see with all those factors. Bottom line on that one. Snail, thank you for the $5 donation. Says that they bring Adams back after passing on Jaden Hicks for night. Everyone involved with the roster should be fired.
I do remember a few weeks ago, Matty F. Brown on X was talking about safeties, and he said he was watching Jaden Hicks tape, and he said he turned it off after like the third play because he was so disgusted. I don't know what he saw. I don't know what he didn't like, but there was something there that he thought was absolutely unplayable. And I wonder if maybe these NFL teams saw some of the same stuff, because he fell a lot further than I expected, I think.
He certainly did to me too. I had a much higher grade. He slowly, I guess that's where you go, man. Trust your initial instincts on a player, Brendan, because he started out like I think in kind of a 5th round place, and I started raising him a little bit as I went through. But yeah, I was just surprised to see him drop because he did seem to fit to what these defenses want. I didn't see him as just as strong, but a guy that could play that cover 2 shell stuff, and he had some things on his game to clean up, but he, played hard, comes downhill, runs the alleyway. He'll try to hit you. He's a pretty good tackler. He can cover in space a little bit. I do say that there was one game I watched, maybe the one Maddie saw, where it's that Wisconsin game, I think, from last year, where you're just like, what are you doing, man? Like, he just looked at times a little bit lost on the field in that game, but that wasn't his whole tape. He had other good tape too, as well. Just that was a one where you're like, yikes.
Yeah, I think there was like some concern about his reactive athleticism, maybe. I'm trying to remember now. But...
No, that's the thing. He comes down the alleyway. He's out of control, right? So he's like,
yeah,
he's going a million miles an hour, and here the back comes. The back goes, oh, I see you. Bounce, and the back bounces, and then he's like, and trying to turn the hips to get the hips flipped with the back, and the back's already then past his outside shoulder, going up the out of bounds line marker, pass. So there's a lot of that on tape too from him, where he just can't. He's got to be right on his approach down when he's coming down in space, or it can be exploited, missed tackles and whatnot.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't get the Adams thing either. I can't see that working on any level. Of all the positions he could play, I don't see how it makes sense. Like, I was about to say like outside corner, but that's not going to work either. It's like, I got nothing. Edge rusher? No.
The only thing I can think come down is that they go, well, we'll just commit to playing stack boxed fronts 24/7. And we'll flip everything of our coverages out of that in and out. And we'll have him down there as kind of the guy, where I'm sure Mike would love it, to where, you got Adams down there. He causes the coverage protections to slide to him. He goes running back to single high safety post snap or something like that. I'm sure that's the type of thing that Mike McDonald will be very like, that could be interesting. But I still come down to, I don't know what position he fits to at this point in his career with where the game has gone. The game just is always moving. It's never stagnant. What it was 7-8 years ago is not what it is today. And it's, positions are becoming ubiquitous. Everybody's having to do a little bit of everything. Having holes in your game that you can't do is becoming, a cornerback that can't tackle. Can't do that. A safety that's a box safety that's not really comfortable in cover 2 or single high situations or cover 6. Can't really do that. We need that now. That's where the game's going on. And maybe that's to some of what hit Hicks here in the evaluation stand, to where somebody looked at him and they went, well, this is, you just have things you can't do. It's not about much as what you can do. It's that what you can't do scares us.
Yeah. And, for me, I'm not some Adams hater. I think he played okay for the most part last year. I'm not, I wasn't one of these people trying to say he's the worst safety I've ever seen. He's worse than Tedrick Thompson. He's, some awful, atrocious, unredeemable player. No, he was playing okay until the Niners game, really. but okay is not that's the best case scenario. You get him and he's okay in some very limited role.
Yeah, agreed. I just the upside's not there for it to do it. But if they do bring back Adams, it's Snail. It is no guarantee he makes the roster too. They may bring him back and have him just okay. We'll give you a chance through training camp to see what you got, but no guarantees. And comes out there and shows you he still doesn't have anything close. And they're like, all right, there's no reason to hold on at that point. So interesting rumor though that this one just keeps coming up. The Adams thing. It's bounced around a couple times this offseason where it's like maybe. Like okay, this is still the thing, huh? Okay. Herman with the triple dono today. Thank you, Herman. Man, I salute you for the 3 donos. He says, thank you for answering my question. Go Hawks. It's our pleasure on that, Herman. Anytime, man. And thank you for all your support today on the channel. Very, 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 very kind of you on that one. I really do appreciate it. And thank you everybody on that. We got caught up on those on the donos there. So thanks, Herman.
Thank you.
So we did go through a little bit of the UDFAs there as far as the kind of the total number here, Brendan. And I know you haven't had a chance to look at all of them. And me and Brendan will talk a little bit more about these guys in the foreseeable weeks as we get a chance to do the bit of the deeper dives on these individual UDFAs we just didn't really get to. Give me, if you could, your 3 guys that you think have both the best shot to make the roster, and then who's your high upside guy of these UDFAs so far? I'm giving you the asterisks TBD, right? You got time still. One of these guys might still come back over, but initial viewpoint on your guy that you like the most at that.
I think Halani's going to make the roster. I'm pretty confident in that. Greenfield could take Forsyth's spot as the backup left tackle if we feel like he fits better.
Okay, I'm with it.
And I'm going to say Nelson Caesar.
Okay, I like it. I will go pretty similar to Brendan's on this one, where I see definitely Nelson Caesar. Scott, I think the best George Halani, then Nelson Caesar, to me have the 1-2 best chances for the opening to getting the roster spot. Usually UDFAs are stacked behind a heavy group, and it's going to be hard to get in there, like the cornerbacks, for instance. But with these guys, I think there's a true opening there, especially if Derek Hall can't come forward here in year 2 as a run defender, as an edge setter, as he did struggle a little bit of that surprisingly last year. I think that will come forward, but it's a little bit worrisome with him because last year it was not there. The guy that I think is the outlier of the guy that could make this roster, Brendan, because the team has traditionally run 3 tight end sets here, or run 3 guys on the roster at the tight end position over Schneider's period. And I know George Fant's on the roster, and this may neutralize this, but if it does not, and the team does intend to carry a 3rd tight end, I think Jack Westover has a great chance of being that 3rd tight end, man.
So Pharaoh Brown just gets cut?
Well, oh yeah, that's right. No, I just spaced on Pharaoh Brown. That's right. No, negate that. So he wouldn't make it. That's right. Because you've got Fant, Barner in this. I completely spaced on Barner. My bad on that.
Yeah.
But he's on the practice squad for sure, that guy.
Yeah,
No
if he gets to the practice squad, that's pretty great.
Yeah. Well, then maybe the benefit of them being a hometown kid where he's like, I'll just wait here. I know in a year from now that there'll be 2 free agents leaving out the door. My pathway to getting in and making the starting roster, and he'll just go in the weight room, Brendan, and just pump out the weights for a year and see if he can gain an extra 5, 10, 20 pounds on there. But I liked him as a blocker, actually. I thought with his skill set, I was walking and expecting more of the H-back, just making catches out there. You know what he can do as a pass catcher, Brendan, but what I really liked with Westover was the effort and technique and getting in there with the leverage, getting his hands in the right spot. He's not going to overwhelm anybody with his power and his strength, but he will get after it in as a blocker, which is saying something versus a lot of these other tight ends at times that just don't want to do any of that.
Yeah. I mean, I have an appreciation for him, of course. I get where he can have value. He can at least be Jacob Hollister. Like Jacob Hollister was at the NFL for a couple years.
Carved out a little bit of a career for himself. Yeah, why not? Mm-hmm. Who's your highest upside guy?
Of the UDFAs?
Yeah.
Maybe, I guess I would say Nelson Caesar. Like, I think he could actually be a rotational edge in this league. I'm thinking between him and Greenfield, because I think Greenfield was a guy who really should have gotten drafted.
Yeah. Did you watching the Maryland offense? Because we got Tagaloa, didn't we?
I know he's not very good. I don't know a ton about him.
I actually liked watching a little bit on tape, but I don't think the quarterbacks for me anything. So
I
I like your pick on that one.
I like him better than Cordero. Or
Yeah, me too. I do like him better than Cordero. He's got a little bit of that ability, like his brother, to throw with some really nice anticipation. You know, the ball's out of his hands at the right time. It's never him sitting and holding usually too much. It's like, bam, it's out, it's going, and he's usually trying to get there. So there's, especially going to a spread offense like ours, having some of that anticipation in your throwing ability is nice. You know, missing obviously a little bit of arm strength, but a little more size, I think, than his brother Tua has. So he could be interesting. I like your Nelson pick, though. I'll go with George just to be counter. I really liked his running style out there. First guy never brings him down. Seems like he's got a little bit of that. It's that sort of Carson contact balance with the Charbonnet side bounce move that he'll do, where he can just kind of always bounce around guys. Not even a jump cut, just kind of I'm going to bounce a little bit, you know, where the jump cuts were really dramatic, and you know it's more just like dink dink dink. He'll kind of bounce around in there. But I like his skill set. I agree with you, man. He'll be your fourth running back on this roster right now. He runs hard. He runs strong. He can fit here. I like that. I like that move on our part. Radu, sorry, what were you going to say?
Nothing. No.
Oh, Radu, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, what do you all think of Adam's return? Vet minimum? Definitely nothing more than that, right?
Yeah, we discussed the Adams thing a little earlier. I'm guessing Radu missed it, but the short version is not even vet minimum. Like, I think there's, if you're going to spend vet minimum, there's somebody else out there who would probably be better.
Yeah, it comes down to, Radu, when you're talking about the team where the cap is, the difference between Adams at the vet minimum at $2 million versus, you know, bringing in a rookie in here or having somebody else in there, you can get it $975, $1 million. That's $1 million saved, and maybe a big deal with the team with where they're at in the cap situation as far as it being so tight right now. But we're not big on Adams' return. I do at the bottom line with it. We don't see a position that's going to be where he's going to be filling to. He's not a linebacker. He doesn't run the split safety stuff well. He's more of a box safety. That's who he is. He needs to go to a team that's going to treat him like a box safety. McDonald's defense is all about making its players do a variety of different things. That's the opposite of what you want to do here, you know, with Adams. If they want to take a flyer on him and see, maybe he can bounce back this year and become like vintage Adams self at 2 years removed from the surgery, they can do that and take the flyer. It doesn't cost them anything to do so in training camp if no other team's offering it. There's no hardship for them to do that. I just think with Brendan, our outlook on it, Randy, is that we just can't see the pathway of how he actually makes the team or what position he fits into or how they would use him within this defense. It all just doesn't seem to quite fit in our minds.
Right.
Nicholas Newton, thank you for the $2 donation. And he got us on just talking about the Tua's brothers. His thoughts on Tua's brothers coming to rookie minicamp?
Yeah, I mean, maybe he makes the practice squad. I like him more than the San Jose State guy, but I still kind of feel like they're going to end up signing some capable veteran to be the practice squad quarterback, because the NFL has that rule now where you can have a third quarterback kind of just waiting in the wings in case of injury. And we're going to want somebody like who was that guy that we would get for the practice squad pretty much every year? He ended up on the Vikings. God, I can't remember his name.
Oh, I know who you're talking about, but I can't think of his name either.
Yeah.
They all run together, all those journeyman quarterbacks. Their names all start to sound alike.
Yeah, you get somebody who can actually play and has proven that they can play at least a little bit, who has been in the NFL a little while.
Yeah. I think if you're going to come in and do it, because remember last year, Nicholas, too, didn't we have those two QBs we had last year? Like every year, I feel like we always have these two flyer UDFA quarterbacks they bring in for mini camps to give them like camp arms. Is sort of, and even more than like looking at them as honest, true prospects, like bring them in so we can function the mini camp like we need to get it function for all the guys. It feels a little bit more like that. He was kind of fun on the tape. I initially watched them, but I haven't had a chance, Nicholas, to get back into him and see where he's like do the deep dive onto his brother. I did like the quick release. I like to throw him with some anticipation. He's got some mobility, a little more size, I think, than his brother did. Arm strength stuff is the thing you reach to a little bit there. But I, it's a flyer kind of situation. Like Brendan said, I think you're more likely when coming out third quarterback or just grabbing some, journeyman guy out there that started some games or played some games in this league and hope you don't have to call upon him. One of those situations.
Yeah. There's probably someone out there who would be a little bit higher floor than Tua's brother.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That would be the expectation. But we'll too, Nicholas, have a little bit of a look at him when we do it. We'll come back around a couple of weeks probably within this and looking at some of the UDFAs and have a chance to do a little bit more of looking at some of these guys a little bit more than we have because we've been knee deep in just the prospects at the top. So just haven't had a chance to kind of get into as much of the stuff so far there. Thank you though,
Yeah.
Nicholas. Appreciate you for that.
Yeah, and the rookie, by the way, rookie minicamp invites almost never make it to the roster. It's like astronomical.
Yeah. It's you want the mini camp to function. So you need enough quarterbacks that can throw. You can have just one guy trying to do all the throws. So you got to kind of float those guys through a little bit to just have so you can have the rest of the practice function the way you need it to function to be able to evaluate the guys the way you're trying to evaluate them and obviously get them into improve and understand the playbook and all that at the same time. Upo, thank you for the $5 donation. I appreciate you, Upo, for that. It says, who's the dark horse shocker to not make the 53-man roster that was here last year? Drake Young, Kobe Bryant, Trey Brown, someone else, Draymond.
I don't even know if Derek would be a dark horse shocker. He kept getting hurt last year. At a certain point, like
He's
you've got to be available.
Yeah.
If I had to guess, I'd say he makes it, but I think it's like a 55-45 situation. Trey Brown's in the last year of his deal, and he's not a good tackler. He may not fit the McDonald formula. Maybe they decide to move off of him because of that.
Yeah, it's hard to think of a shocker one for me, Upo, that comes to mind on this. I mean, there's ones that you can say that could make some sense, but like Brent's talking, Trey Brown, does he not have trade value if you want to move him for a 6th or 7th round pick somewhere? Probably would, I would think. Drake wouldn't necessarily, but it just, you go through the list a bit. And you mentioned Draymond. I think that's right. Draymond's a possibility because you could always post June 1st him at any point here. I think once he gets past June 1st, you're probably not likely to do it because you can't, then you take on the full hit. And I don't know if that makes as much sense to them. So, oh, my thing's coming on. So I'm not sure if that would be the way that would work with that myself. I don't have a shocker one. Stone Forsythe, I think, is by Brendan's a good suggestion. I mean, that's one that could just come down where there's no trade and you just release him. People are thinking, oh, well, he played pretty good for us last year. He'll be here next year. But then there's, like Brendan brought up, there's more things that factor into it than just his play. It's also what he's making as he's going into now his contract year to becoming a free agent. So I think that's one to me that, maybe, I can't think of any other one though, really, as a shocker, Brendan.
Yeah. I think that the guys who would have been shockers would have been traded this last weekend, and it didn't happen. So I got nothing.
Yeah, I don't got anything in there. Maybe I can't even go to a guy like the guy from the Giants last year, Julian Love. He's too pure of a fit for the scheme. I just think he's going to be a great fit for McDonald, and no one love him in this defense. It's like I just can't see that.
Yeah, you got to keep him. At this point, especially like he's a starter.
Yeah,
what are you going to do? Cut him, and throw Jerrel Reed out there with one ACL? No,
or Kobe Bryant. And Kobe wouldn't be a shocker either because you've already moved him to two different positions, which has shown itself. The team doesn't have exactly a lot of love for him in the first place to be bouncing him around that much as it is. So it doesn't become a shocker if he does get cut at this point. It's actually kind of like he's probably got an uphill battle to get into the roster as it stands.
Right.
John M429, thank you for the $5 donation. I appreciate you for that double dip, Don. Today, I know that's your second dono. Started watching both of you. My first two channels I liked right after the Forsythe Eskridge draft. You guys are awesome. Much love. Keep it up. Well, thanks, John.
Thank
Very
you,
kind of you, man. Yeah, we were. That was our first draft on. We had to. Boy, that was a tough draft, Paul.
That was the 3 picks, right? We had the 3 picks.
What do we, you got to wait 3 years to give a draft a proper grade, Brendan. What was your grade at the time?
I don't think I was doing like firm grades back then. I just was like, whatever. I liked Forsythe. The Forsythe pick was good. I thought that was good value.
I did too.
Yeah. I didn't hate Eskridge, but I was just kind of confused because I thought that we would draft a bigger receiver because I thought that was Waldron's style. I was surprised we drafted someone so small. But I didn't hate him. I was just kind of like, whatever.
Yeah.
Trey Brown, I didn't know anything about. So I was just like, okay, sure.
Yeah, and Trey, I knew a little bit about. I, of course, didn't like the Eskridge pick at all. I was out on that one completely. But I did like the Trey Brown pick in the moment. I thought he fit the scheme real well for what he was as an outside corner and staying on top. And I like Forsythe in the 6th. That was a good move for them. I think I ended up giving it a B grade, but it was much just because I didn't like it was the Eskridge. Only on 3 picks. It was the Eskridge thing that just drove me crazy a little bit.
Yeah.
On that side of things. I was like, ugh, come on.
I probably was giving it like a B- area, something like that.
Where does it stand now?
Now, I guess you kind of roll Curhan into it as well because he was the one UDFA that was able to do something. It's like, if you're being real, it's like, isn't it like a D+ or something?
Maybe I probably I'd go maybe a C+. Trey Brown started some games for you, and he's been good in some games. He's been injured a lot. That's hurt. Eskridge is giving you nothing. But it's injury based as much as you miss the evaluation there. Did you miss the evaluation as a player? It's hard to predict a guy's just going to be injured. And Forsythe has certainly outperformed what you'd get from a 6th-round pick as far as his performance on the field and how much he's played as a starter. So probably I'd be like C+, maybe even get to C+, maybe, about for me. It's hard with the injuries because that's just tough to predict. And I mean, well, it isn't because Eskridge, of course, was beat to hell coming out of college. So
yeah,
we actually could have anticipated that, unfortunately. Thank you, though, John. Appreciate you for that, man. Very kind of you. The Real Cheese with a $5 donation. Do we see any mid-season trades? I'd imagine so. Good question.
Well, we're not going to have a lot of cap space, so I don't think it's going to be very easy for us to make a trade to bring something in. And you generally only trade out if you're having a really bad year and you're just trying to get value for something you're going to lose anyway. So I'm going to say no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that this is not a year that's likely to see us do a trade deadline deal, Real Cheese. The only way I could see it maybe being a possibility is if the team somehow just took to McDonald like the wind to a sail on a yacht in out there in the harbor in Washington. So if you're walking through and you're 5-1 or something, maybe John gets a little bit kinky with it. He's like, ooh, let's go. But absent that, I think the team just sits and stands. Brendan mentioned guys that you'd be maybe losing a year from now. We really don't have a lot of pure free agents moving into next year that you're really worried about, in the way of like, could a guy like Uchenna Nwosu be moved around the trade deadline, with where the edge group is at as it stands, something like that could be kind of, brought up, where safety could be moved if you're in sell mode, but much more likely it's Real Cheese you're in sell mode more than you're in buy mode, because both me and Brendan aren't seeing the team necessarily that ready to take off instantaneous with McDonald. It's going to take a little bit of time. And because they did push the trade deadline back though this year, Brendan.
Yeah,
I think we do get the 2 weeks back. So that will, I'm glad they did that, by the way. Aren't you? Like that makes a lot of sense.
I love it.
Yeah, it's a much more smarter the NFL to do this way. So it is possible they're more in sell mode than buy mode, I think, Real Cheese. But if they do go crazy town, John's shown that in the past that if the team's really rolling, he's not going to be shy about doing that. But I think he wants to keep, as he showed by not trading up in this draft, he really wants to keep the draft capital held on to for the future next year's draft. I think he's in particular not looking to offload any of that, compensatory picks included.
Yeah, I think this year is going to be a chill year. Even if we end up having a really good start to the season, I still would be like, we don't have the money for it. Like, look what the Rams had to do to make that Von Miller trade work.
Mm-hmm.
It was painful, but they felt like, they were so close and they just needed one more push to get there. So they went for it, but they had to give up so much stuff for a 10-game rental. Like, I don't really know if I need to be doing that right now.
If I'm going to be doing it, I want to be in the Rams position where I'm at, where it's like, I know we're ready to go. And to think you're going to get to that certain of a spot halfway into the season under new coaching like that, it just seems like a little bit much to believe that you get to that sort of conclusion.
Yeah. I want to remind everybody in the chat that Josh McDaniels' Denver Broncos started their first season 6-0 and then ended up going, I think, 8-8. So they might have believed they had something special at one point, and very quickly they found out they did not.
Yeah. Much better to lean on the historical perspective of new coaches coming in, of first year's evaluation, first year's kind of just figuring things out, which doesn't mean you go for it. Doesn't mean you make huge trades of urgency. You let it play out. You let yourself truly see what you got, and then turn around a year from now. As John set the stage here, Real Cheese, really. And if you stay patient through this year, you don't give up any of your future draft capital we look at next year, you got all 7 of your picks. Brendan, right? You get 2 more compensatory picks minimum back, right? That's what we're anticipating. At least 2 compensatory picks coming on top of that. You can clear almost $100 million in cap space with some easy contracts on the books to get out from under. That's the time to go out there and start striking and moving forward. Not quite into this year at this moment, I wouldn't think.
Agreed.
Thank you, Real Cheese. Appreciate you, though. Snail, thank you for the $2 donation. Another donation, Snail. Appreciate you. It says, did we ever find out if Sam Lockett is related to Tyler Lockett? My research said no on this.
Yeah, I'm not aware of a relation there either. I don't know much about Sam. I know a little bit, but
there was a Nehemiah Lockett from the Appalachian Mountains in 1875, where they did technically share some lineage at that point, but that's where it branched out, you know. Yeah, even back then they were known for being very fleet of foot as hunters. So, you know, little known fact there about the Locketts. It's been known for hundreds of years about that.
Yeah, Sam was one of the rookie invites, right?
He was one of the safety rookie invites brought in. So, hey, safety's kind of open up right now. So you never know out there, Snail. Maybe you get a Coug out here. Snail wanted a safety Coug, Brendan. And it's that old thing of, you know, you're not going to get the one you want, but you'll get what you need. Where he wanted it to be Jaden Hicks, but he's just going to have to settle for it being Sam Lockett.
Yeah.
Was he WSU? He was WSU.
Yeah,
right?
he was WSU. I think we got a linebacker from WSU as well, but they're both like, again, you got a better odds of winning the Powerball than having one of those guys make the 53 man.
Yeah, we'll see what Tyler can help out his guys. Help him with some insider info on that, Snail. But yeah, technically not related based on what we're reading from that. Brewski, thank you for the $5 donation. Appreciate you, Brewski. Says, do you think Bobo gets more targets? More Bobo, please.
Probably not. I would say. I think that I'm just going to say, I think the defense will be better, which means we're going to run the ball more because we're going to be playing with the lead more often. We're not going to be scrambling, trying to catch up with all these teams dropping 40 on us. And therefore less targets for a receiver like Bobo, who is going to be fighting for reps anyway.
Yeah. I think that the receiving core is just as stocked as it was last year, Brooksy, if not more so. Laviska Shenault now is on a guaranteed 1-year deal. And I'm not saying the team's looking to invest in Laviska, but I think the guaranteed money you gave that guy you're on the roster basically means yes, he'll be used as a special teams guy, but he'll probably find his way to getting some touches on the field as well. Does that mean it cuts more a little bit into a guy like Bobo's reps at that point? I think he ends up coming around getting about what he got last year, absent there being an injury, Brewski. And that's not anything against Bobo not developing or getting better. It's just more about how stocked up and well put together the receiving core is for the Seahawks as it is right now. Not many could crack into this lineup. So the thing that helps him is his blocking ability and his willingness as a blocker. That's going to get him snaps on the field at times. But unless there's an injury, it's just hard. These are, dynamic guys on the outside still in what they do, and they're very efficient in what they do. And you expect JSN to take a step forward. And, Brendan said about the running, I think that's valid too, where, they're going to maybe in more situations, less of having to throw all the time, and a little bit more of, hey, we can kind of grind on this running game a little bit more with our 2 real talented running backs. And that's in addition here to Bobo. We've got 2 talented running backs. We're going to want to get them their touches as well. There's only so many balls to go around. But I love Bobo, Brooksy. I'm really happy to see what he did. He was my favorite UDFA out last year. He really was. And so to see him to really build on that, he had a hell of a season. He had some great catches on those few times they did target him. Had even a freaking touchdown on a fly sweep. He was giving, like, every week he was giving you something. But it's just going to be hard for him here. Maybe after Lockett retires, if he can really sell the team on being that guy that maybe can be the silent, cold-blooded heir apparent to Tyler Lockett nobody's really considering.
Yeah, I could maybe see that. There have been receivers who carve out higher than expected roles based off their talent level. And if you've got a lot of other good things going on, it's a little bit easier for them to get by. But this year, no, I think this year is going to be about kind of the JSN ascendance. Yeah,
agreed. JSN's going to be kind of rolling here this year, I think. And you got DK, you got Tyler in there, you got Fant. You're going to try to figure in, you got your 2 running backs. There's so many guys get the ball. Kenny McIntosh, does he start getting some touches in this offense a little bit? So many targets to get to. Oxo, thank you for the $5. Appreciate you for that. With the talent and new coaching, are the days of fearing Colt McCoys and other backups over?
You would certainly hope so. I'm thinking about the Ravens defense last year. Who were the quarterbacks that were able to beat them up a little bit? It was like Stafford had a really good game, right?
Right.
And Stafford was really good last year. In fact, he was shockingly good coming off that injury that he had.
He had an MVP-like season last year, in my opinion. Very close to it.
It was like stealth MVP. You look at the numbers and they're not impressive. Like his numbers were not that good. But you look at what he's doing out there, it's like, wow, something's going on here.
He put throws on that just he had as many absurd throws on tape as any quarterback last year that I saw. I mean, that first game alone against us, there had to be about 8 or 9 throws in that game where he's putting it in just a little cubby hole of a space, and the only spot he could complete the ball, and he completes it.
Let me see here. What else? They got a little bit. I'm not really going to throw that in there. I guess they got a little bit beat up by the Browns in that one game. So there's a not so great quarterback, because that was one of the games where the Browns were playing, I want to say, PJ Walker. Let me make sure on that one. No, that was a Deshaun Watson game. Okay. Deshaun Watson game. They kind of got beat up by, the Rams. And the Niners had a decent amount of success against them, but overall, I think they were happy with how that game went. So I'm not seeing a lot of like lackluster quarterbacks beat him up, unless you think that Watson's a lackluster quarterback at this point, which he is trending that way.
Any QB in this league has got a potential of taking down a defense. I'll say that off the rip there, Hawk. So what caused our defense to get taken down over and over again prior by backup quarterbacks was the simplicity of the scheme and the lack of willingness to adapt to the opponent on a weekly basis. We're going to do what we do. We do what we do, and it doesn't matter who's across from us. So if we've got a weak-armed guy across from us, backup quarterback, we're still going to go to our cover 3 depth. We're still going to play the deep ball. The guy doesn't do that. It's Colt McCoy. He can't throw it past 45 yards down the field. We don't care. We're going to drop to 50. And that's the stuff that we would do maddeningly so over and over again. And a backup quarterback is not going to overplay themselves. Why they had so much success is because a backup quarterback knows what they are. Their limitations and their strengths. They will stay within their strengths. And if you give them an easy slant route opened up that they can look at as a first read and dip it off that slant, they will take that all day if that's what you're going to give them. And Coach Carroll's defense was all built on that whole, philosophy that the quarterback gets impatient over the course of the game. And he's going to take his shot at some point down the field, and we'll strike when that happens. And as we saw over the years, quarterbacks started to learn if we just stay patient against this defense, it might take us all day to kind of break them. Might take us all day to kind of wear them down in this process, but you will wear them down. You will get your points, and you will be productive on the offensive side of the ball. So yes, that part for what caused your defense to have problems is out the door now. A backup may come in and get us, but it's not going to be on the back of making it easy on them. That's the key, is we made it too easy on those backups to do it. And that's why a guy like Colt McCoy could be on the Giants this year and slay you, and then go to the Cardinals the next year and then slay you on a whole different team. Didn't matter, a whole different personnel, even though neither of those two teams were particularly good on either end at that point, because Colt knew what your defense was. He knew exactly what he was going to get on play in and play out every single time. And that's the complete opposite of Mike McDonald's defense.
Yeah, so I'm definitely hoping that era has changed, and I think that it has.
Yeah, I think that's gone out the door now at this point. So we're not going to make it easy on you, and that's part of the flexibility and versatility of this defense as well. Is they can cater. It can cater on a weekly basis to what you do at your worst offensively. We're going to force you to play that way. And we'll do it less about our system and our scheme and how we got to run it. We're going to be more about going after your weaknesses and attacking that. And I love that about this new defense.
Mm-hmm.
Nicholas Newton's got a couple of donos back to back here. First one up, and thank you for that, Nicholas. He says Glassridge was such a waste of a second round pick. Yeah, it was a brutal one for me because I didn't think that this should have been as tough an evaluation for John. I understand that the Tyreek Hill thing was fitted in every general manager's mind throughout the league, and this happens. It happened with Deebo Samuel, Brendan, where guys just get stuck in their brain of, we got to go find this archetype of this player now. That's the new hotness. And the Reek thing was the new hotness. And so you looked at Glassridge and you squinted your eyes and, you looked at him from a distance and maybe, but there were so many warning signs on this with him. And it was the three main warning signs for me when I was evaluating him coming out of college. One, he literally got to a point of having so many injury problems that he changed his jersey number to change his injury luck in college. Guy does that. That's not a good sign about the injury front. And he's not a big guy. So it wasn't like you're like, well, he's such a big guy. Eventually he'll get them, he'll get his old man muscle on there and he'll be fine. The other thing was not a great route runner. Kind of problematic if you're not a very good route runner as a wide receiver. And I got to just manufacture my touches to get you the ball. And then not very good hands. So you as a receiver, you can't catch and you don't run particularly good routes and you're really injury prone. Had a hard time getting to the point of finding a second round grade within that. And I think that in retrospect, it's been proven true out of that. And it's more of a lesson than it is to shake a fist at John. This is a lesson.
Yeah.
You're missing these attributes on a player and receiver like that in this day and age with so many receivers coming out are so good. You can't do that. You got to take that at the right valued spot.
Yeah. And I remember looking at receivers that year because I thought we might take one. And I remember really being impressed with what I saw from Amon-Ra. So that one hurts too because he ended up getting all the way to the 4th round somehow, which I didn't expect, and he's awesome.
Wasn't he 9-day difference with what you saw from Eskridge because he's out there making really tough catches at USC. Like he's extending. He's not a big guy, but on these throws to him, and he's not got the greatest of quarterback play at that time. And he's out there just making acrobatic catch after acrobatic catch. And then you see Eskridge will come in and run a slant, and he body catches, and it bounces up off his body, and then it goes and gets intercepted. And you go, dude, the quarterback put it on your body. You didn't even alligator arm it. You just anticipated you're about to get hit. And so you let it bounce up off your arms. And you watch to your point, the two difference between those two guys in that draft coming out. You're like, how do you get to Eskridge on this one, John? Come on.
Yeah. And I don't really know. I didn't even look at Eskridge in the pre-draft process. I knew who he was, but I remember not looking at him specifically because I thought we would be looking at a bigger receiver. I didn't think we'd want a little small guy because of Waldron. The Rams mostly had bigger receivers, so I thought that he'd be trying to emulate that because the Rams at that time had Robert Woods, who was a bigger guy, Cooper Kupp, who was big for a slot. He was like, 6'1"?
Yeah.
And they had one other guy who was kind of big too. So
and Jefferson.
Something like
Jefferson. Was that pick? Maybe that he was in that draft. I forget.
No, Tutu Atwell was the
that's right. It was Atwell that draft. Okay. So yeah, Van was already there. He's 6'2", to your point.
Yeah.
So yeah. So yeah, I definitely feel that way too there. And Nicholas Brandon, I think you should start calling him Glassridge all the time. Just saying. Well, it definitely does apply. I do feel a little bad if I call him Glassridge to a degree, Nicholas, because I don't, some of the stuff is his fault, like the, disturbance thing that he had where he gets arrested for that and then gets, suspended. Like, I'll give you a hard time for that. It's harder for me on the injury front because I don't think that it's a matter of what these guys they're necessarily doing something, and I just don't know. I guess as much anything, it's like bad luck. It's like, it's like calling Jamal Adams soft or something like I hear people sometimes do, and it's like. I always have a hard time doing that on that, Nicholas, just because I'm like, well, it's, I'll give a guy a hard time if it's something that he's responsible for and it's in his control and he did something that, you go, all right, this guy's got it. But if it's something that's kind of out of his control, and it's like, you feel bad for him having to go through it. You're like, well, I can't really hit him on that. I can get on Jamal about lack of skill set stuff that goes on, but I would never give him, for instance, anything about the toughness or anything like that. It's just body start breaking down at the worst time. And it's happened to many football players before where there's no sometimes rhyme or reason to it. Some guys just get hit at the weird time,
Yeah. I mean, we're having a different conversation right now if he doesn't get cheap shotted in his first ever NFL game, which I still think that was a dirty hit.
Yeah, with forearm shivers to the helmet are supposed to be not in the game anymore. That was supposed to go out about 1957. I think they started legislating the clothesline kind of plays to your point. But I'll give him a call out to that every once in a while, Nicholas. I'll give you a subtle nod to the Glassridge. But I want to see the kid succeed too. I want to see him come back this year as much as I don't think it's going to happen. I'd love to see him come back an absolute demon who's been training, 24/7 for the last year going, man, this is it. My last chance. I got to make this go. What a great story it would be if he could reclimate his career in that way. It really could. But No, I'll definitely. I don't have any problem giving the hard time about the route running, the hand stuff. Like receiver, you should be taking care of that stuff. As a receiver, I don't have any sympathy for the guy that can't catch, who's fighting his hands. That's your position, that's your job. That's like a plumber that can't unblock a toilet, or a fireman that can't put out a fire. Like this is your base function of your job. You've got to do that. So I'll give him a hard time with that. But it's hard on the injury front for me because I feel bad for those guys on that a little bit, Nicholas. I got a little sympathy for him on that because I know how hard that must be, having that be the factor that holds you back. Appreciate you though, Nicholas, for the triple donation tonight, man. Salute you. You're very kind for that. Holiest hand grenade. Thank you for the $2 donation. He said we had Ricardo Lockett. I remember that KO.
Yeah, he had the E, of course, but yeah, I remember Ricardo.
Ricardo was good, man. Maybe one of the best gunners that we've ever had in Seahawks history. Certainly had the flashiest gunning plays as far as lighting up punt returners back there, and his willingness to go right on the line. Did you give him a yard, or did you give him like 6 inches? Right on the catch. He was definitely one that would go right to that line on it. But the officials let him get away with it. I don't think they would now. And some of those hits Lockett got away with back in the day, because he just about on a couple of those, maybe separated head from shoulders on a couple of those ones, that Niner conference championship game and whatnot.
Haven't been able to replace him yet.
Haven't had a gunner quite as good since Lockett left. We've had some decent ones, but nobody that's been quite as good as he was. But thank you, Holy Stand Grenade, and everybody in the chat. A lot of donations tonight. You guys are very kind for all of that support here on the channels. Really, 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 really do appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody. Yes.
So I'm going to hold off on my grade, Brennan, because I'm doing a show tomorrow around the final draft grades and some just draft thoughts I've got kind of outside of anything in regards to Seattle. But I would like to know give me, if you can, your draft grade, and then do it in tandem with the last 2 draft grades that have been very, of course, successful drafts, to give people a little bit of comparison on this, if you could for me, please.
I think that I think it's a B+. I don't think we made any bad picks. We didn't do anything that I strongly objected to. We didn't do anything that I would consider to be just out and out like bad. There were some things that were suboptimal, but that's totally fine. That's part of the process. I've really learned over the years to not get tunnel vision in the draft. I don't lock onto one player and turn my brain off as to every other path. So It's a good draft. Last year was an A-, and the year before was an A. So I don't think it's as good as those 2, but that's really hard to be as good as those 2.
It is why we celebrated those last 2 drafts. And Brendan, it wasn't just because we had so many picks either. You and I are celebrating those last 2 drafts, not to put words in your mouth, but because of how good the value was throughout in the players you were getting.
Right. And it's also easier when you have a pick in the top 10, which we did each of the last 2 years.
Yes, it is. You still got to get those picks right, though. And that's the good part about it. Is like Cross, you looked on draft day and said, hey, we might have gotten the best left tackle in this draft. I think it's been proven out that that's been probably pretty close to the case. And, with Witherspoon, you got, okay, we think we got the best corner, and it could be a lockdown guy. And he proved almost to be the defensive rookie of the year last year. So who did win? It was Byron Turner, right? Byron Murphy. Was it that? Who was not Murphy, but it was the Tennessee kid from the Rams that won it, wasn't it?
No, not Kobe Turner.
I'm going to throw you off on this one now.
Shoot.
Byron Young.
Byron Young, yes. Thank you.
There we go. They all send the names run together. So just missing last year. So the value was so strong throughout those drafts too. This draft was still very solid. And if you put this draft, Brendan, up against 2017, 18, 19, 20, certainly surpasses those ones as far as your, in my opinion, use of value throughout the draft and your approach throughout the draft. So still remains one of the stronger drafts in the last 10 years, even though it can't reach those marks of the last 2. I also think it was a very solid one from my perspective. I'll be doing my final kind of grade tomorrow on that with it, but good UDFA all as well. Let's add this in addition. You and I are believers in this, that you got to have the UDFA haul in and look at it. And might have gotten your 4th running back, who's a good player as the roster. Might have gotten 2 guys that we have 5th round grade, or I have a 5th round grade on 2 guys. You got at least on one of them, and Caesar the edge, and then Westover. So that certainly adds to the value of this draft as well.
I had a 5th round grade on Greenfield.
5th round grade on Greenfield. So there's at least 2 from your perspective on that. I just haven't had a chance to look too much close at Greenfield. So that also helps. Putting those all together is kind of a button up, little cherry on top of the draft is a nice spot. So good draft. Seahawks did the heavy lifting, in my opinion, the previous 2 years. They just need to do strongly in this one to keep carrying this thing forward to where we're hoping this thing can get, Brendan, which is back to an elite stage of things, which is to a Super Bowl window. And certainly, wherever you stay on this draft, this team has taken itself forward now, back a little bit more further to that direction of things. We don't know how close we are to arriving there, but we're definitely getting closer and closer. And that's what we had to look at this 3 years ago when we turned this over to Russell. We said, this is all a rebuild the old report. We got to turn this thing over. We got to get all these positions put back together. And okay, now we're getting downstream here. We're a little bit downwind on this one. And so we're getting closer and closer and closer. A little more patience from you Seahawks fans, but we're right there on the edge here of this thing to really ready to explode. And they're doing it in the right way, which is the important part.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Sorry, go ahead.
I agree. I just said I agree.
Eric Cotter, thank you for finishing this up very strongly on this stream with a $10 donation to go with so much support today. You guys have been amazing, as you guys always are. He says, I disagree with you often, but I am still here. Thank you, Ed Zander. Well, thank you, man. I think it's a really important thing that both me and Brendan and again, Brendan, I hate always I'm not trying to talk for you. So, correct me on this if I start speaking to you for too much. But me and him both, I think, do value and are trying to always be hyper aware. We have our opinions and we're strongly about it. And I'll go with Brendan and stuff that he says, and he'll go with stuff I say. And we really believe what we do say. But neither of us, I think, are looking for in either of our community an echo chamber. What we do not want or what we're not seeking out is that you've got to just agree with everything we say and that we're wanting people in alignment of what everything we say. In fact, the opposite is what I would say. Again, Brendan, please correct me on this if I'm speaking out of pocket on this for you on this, but want people with all different manner of ideas and understandings. We bristle at stuff that gets talked about like the DK trade stuff, but hey, we'll still discuss it and talk about it. It's more about talking about all the possibilities and iterations and what could go on or how this could go and what's the smartest approach. And you can't do that if you're just looking for everybody to be agreeing with you all the time. Certainly, you're not going to get to those kind of creative, out of the box kind of ideas, especially in that case.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially there are a lot of things where there's a lot of room to have disagreements when it comes to something like football.
Absolutely. I mean, and nobody's got nobody's circled around having their own little grab on the truth, and they only know the truth. And it's why I always say, Eric, I feel like from the community spirit of things, you kind of get the truth from so many voices. It's that whole thing we talk about with these draft boards on the consensus boards. Brendan mentions it a lot, consensus boards. Why does he mention it a lot? Because Brendan's fully aware of the fact that rather than there being an individual expert who has this more understood than anybody else, even with all those guys that are connected in and piped in throughout the league, and this guy told me they're taking that guy told me they're taking this, those guys still get outpushed every year by the pure consensus board, the pure brain power of the collective and what it brings to getting the ultimate truth of how these drafts will run and the way that they'll kind of play out when it comes to draft day. And I think that there's something to that. And that's part of what I really love about my community where I stand. And I'm sure you are very much the same place where you're at, Brendan.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys. We had a lot of people today in the chat. Brendan, I appreciate you hanging on for me for almost 2.5 hours here as we had a lot to discuss with this draft and the Seahawks business going on. I had a great time as well, man, with you just as we put the final button up here on our draft coverage. We'll certainly come back and look at some of these UDFAs, but it was a great year again, doing this another year, looking at these guys deep. I think we'll go back into it deep again this year, folks. So get ready for September 2025. We're going to start putting our list together here in about 3 months, Brendan. So refreshing up, man. Can't clear all these prospects out. It's a recycle time at this point.
Yep.
But thank you, man, for doing this with me and doing all these shows and getting as deep into this as we got into this. I really appreciate you for that.
Yeah, thank you. We'll do it again next year if they let us.
If they let us, if the creeks are still running and the world's still going here at that point. But thank you guys. Got an exciting time coming up here. We'll go in a little bit in the dead period. We'll be covering some variety of topics here still at the BNB Show. So we will still be here coming at you guys into the future time period. Appreciate you watching. Do me this favor if you could for me. Do subscribe on up to both of our two channels here. I'm the Hawks Nest here. And then you've got Seahawks Brendan Nelson. Please subscribe to both those two channels. Both trying to move our way to 20,000 subscribers. Definitely the next goal in mind, as well as hit the like button on either side that you may be watching this video, his channel or my channel. We will be back soon. Probably about a week from now to give ourselves that full chance and let me rest up and get over this freaking cold that I can't kick.
Mm-hmm.
But until that time, my fellow Seahawks contingent, I shouldn't have to remind you after a very successful draft and a team that seems to be on the precipice, but you know what? We're going to do so anyway. Please do not you ever forget. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.